Okay, I see the live stream is up. Amy, we are in gallery mode, but other than that, we should be good.
Thank you all for your time and apologies for the delay. I think we are back on live stream.
Yep, looks all good.
Okay,
At this time, thank you. At this time, will sergeants please start their recordings?
Recording to the PC on the way.
Thank you.
Cloud PC is up.
Thank you.
Backup is rolling.
Thank you, and good afternoon, and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing of the Committee on Youth Services. At this time, would all council members and staff please turn on their video? To minimize disruption, please place electronic devices on vibrate or silent mode. If you wish to submit testimony, you may do so at testimony@council.nyc.gov. Once again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. We are ready to begin.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for bearing with us through those technical difficulties. 2 years later, we still have those issues, so appreciate everyone's time and patience. Good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Althea Stevens, Chair of the New York City Council Committee on Youth Services. Welcome to today's virtual hearing on DYCD's Summer 2022 Program Readiness. Today marks my first hearing as chair of this committee, but it's hardly my first time working with DYCD or Youth Services. Each summer for the last 20 years, I have personally operated a DYCD summer youth camp. I have seen firsthand how these programs support, nurture, and motivate our youth, and I understand the considerable commitment and costs these programs require. This is why I am particularly excited for today's hearing. DYCD's summer program provide critical academics and social and employment opportunity for the city's youth. It's our responsibility to ensure that these programs are prepared and fully equipped to meet our children's needs. DYCD always has been ambitious in its mission to alleviate the effects of poverty and provide opportunity for New Yorkers to flourish. Its summer youth employment program is the largest in the country and continue to grow. Just a few weeks ago, Mayor Adams announced that this summer youth SYEP will offer a record 100,000 job opportunities, the largest number of jobs ever made available in the program's 60-year history. Last year, as part of the city recovery plan and help to make up for COVID learning loss, DYCD, in collaboration with the Department of Education, launched Summer Rising, a new innovative program that provided free, comprehensive academic and extracurricular instructions for any child in grades K to 12. At its launch, Summer Rising aimed to accommodate as many as 200,000 students and nearly met that goal with 199 students served. Despite the success, Summer Rising launch had many logistical complications with long wait lists, staff shortages, and budget concerns. Those issues service providers too often have managed while running their programs. Those are the issues I would like to address as part of our hearing today. What has become apparent is that ambition alone is insufficient. DYCD must be prepared to fully support its providers in implementing their goals. At this hearing, the committee will seek to overview DYCD's proposed programming in preparation for the summer 2020. The committee also seeks to examine the concerns raised by providers regarding the contracting process for youth service providers and how that process can be improved. I want to thank the staff behind the scenes making sure the online hearing runs smoothly. I would like to thank the committee staff for working on this issue. Committee counsel Amy Briggs, committee policy analyst Anastasia Zama, I think I said her last name wrong, I'm sure I did, and financial unit head Isha Wright. And I would like to thank my chief of staff and budget director Kate Connolly, and always the A team who keeps me focused. I would like to now acknowledge my colleagues who have joined us. I don't think. Councilmember Richardson, Councilmember Osei, Councilmember Aviles, Councilmember Williams, Councilmember Riley. I think that's all I see. So thank you. I will now turn it over to committee counsel who will review our protocol items relating to today's hearing.
Thank you, Chair Stevens. My name is Amy Briggs. I am counsel to the Committee on Youth Services at the New York City Council, and I will be moderating today's hearing and calling panelists to testify. Before we begin, I would like to remind everyone that you will be on mute until I call on you to testify. And after you're called, you will be unmuted by the host. Please listen for your name. I will periodically announce who will be the next panelists. Council members' questions will be limited to 5 minutes. And council members, please note that this includes both your questions and the witnesses' answers. Please also note that we will allow a second round of questions at today's hearings. These will be limited to 2 minutes each, again, including both your questions and the witness's answer. For public testimony, I will call up individuals in panels. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the raise hand function in Zoom. You will be called on after everyone on that panel has completed their testimony. For public panelists, once I call your name, a member of our staff will unmute you and the Sergeant at Arms will give you the go-ahead to begin speaking after setting the timer. All public testimony will be limited to 4 minutes. After I call your name, please wait a brief moment for the Sergeant at Arms to announce you and you may begin. At today's hearing, we will begin with a panel of youth with lived experiences and providers and service providers. Our first panel of witnesses will include Serena Zhang, Cindy Wu, Levka Starkova from Project Reach, Yasmin Schwartz of the Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation, and Durin Green from the Kingsbridge Community Center. I will now begin with Serena Zhang.
Hello, can you guys hear me? You guys can hear me, okay? Okay. Hi, my name is Serena. I'm in NYCC Youth. I had 2 employment experiences, both of which took place during COVID. I was part of SYEP in 2020 and SIP, Summer Internship Program, in 2021, which both offered me so many different lessons and skills that still stick with me today. A little bit about my SYEP experience. It was more program based. So I had access to resources like Mighty Networks and Hats and Ladders, where I was able to learn about work readiness, financial literacy, career exploration in college. One of the things that we learned still resonates with me today, which was achieving financial literacy through investment. And this is something that most often isn't taught in at school. So I'm really appreciative of learning about that. But it also definitely sparked an interest in me. Even now, I still have goals of investing in the future. And because of SYEP, I was not only able to learn new things, but it also, helped me build up new interests and hobbies. On the other hand, my SIP experience was very work-based. I got the chance to expose myself to a career that interested me, which was teaching. That summer it was actually last summer, I think. Yeah, I got to remotely tutor younger students, grade assignments, and offer feedback. And because of SIP, I was able to understand what it really means to be a teacher. And I got to see for myself if it was something that I could actually see myself doing in the future. So it definitely offered me an opportunity that's really hard to find elsewhere. So yeah, both of these experiences definitely gave me a chance to spend my summer wisely, especially during COVID where jobs were limited. I was able to learn new things, gain important skills, and all while earning money for college, which was definitely a really great bonus. This was also especially valuable to me because I was able to do all of this during the summer, which is definitely hard to find the time for it during the school year when you have to manage your academic life as well as extracurriculars. So it gave me the chance to do or spend my summer, a time where I have a lot of free time to do something that would help me in the future. But also, I guess I can end it off with, I think that one of the biggest things was it taught me the value of money and work ethic, which I'm really grateful for. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I will now call on Cindy Wu.
Hi, my name is Cindy, and I also did SIP or Summer Internship Program last summer, 2021 under Learn and Earn. This was my first internship through Learn and Earn's SIP and also in general in my life after previously volunteering at my local library for a very long time, ever since I started high school. I got to work as a tutor under SIP, where I was teaching elementary school children and helping them improve their reading, writing, comprehension skills, and math, while also grading and giving them feedback on their work to help them grow to be stronger students, thinkers, and with these skills. Through SIP, I was able to explore the field of education a bit by working as a tutor, because I have always been interested in the education and teacher career field. And as a result, through SIP, I actually got a real firsthand experience in what it was like working as a teacher, or in this case, as a tutor through the summer, and in general, how the education field and career is like, which is why I am really glad that I had this opportunity through Learn and Earn SIP. Moreover, with this opportunity last year, it made me realize that an education career is actually something I am actually interested in, and I like to potentially pursue in the future, and further help me with deciding the major I want to apply for my college applications that I did and submitted a few months ago. So all in all, I'm very grateful and thankful for my SIP internship, because it was very helpful and allowed me to explore the field that I was interested in at first, and also made me realize that I was very interested in it, and also taught me a lot of skills. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I will now call on Levka Starkova.
Hi, my name is Levka Starkova. My pronouns are they, them. So I did SYAP at Project Reach, and I worked as a youth staff facilitator. And like for me, mostly it was just facilitating conversations around social justice and figuring how to pace these discussions. For me, SYP was much more than just a job or just a place to get leadership skills. It also introduced me to Project Reach, which is now like my second home. It gave me a place to be outside of my actual home, an excuse to leave the house during the summer. And it introduced me to a lot of people who, a few of them I'm now friends with, because we all shared similar interests and was really passionate, genuine people. Yeah, so it also gave me leadership skills, gave me money, which I badly needed at the time, and was just a genuinely enjoyable experience all around. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I will now call on Yasmin Schwartz.
Thank you, Chair Stevens and members of the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify. My name is Yasmin Schwartz, pronouns she, her, and I work for Cypress Hills LDC. I've been in the out-of-school time field for 12 years. As a provider that offers many youth service contracts, we are thrilled that SYP has been baselined. I would like to turn our focus to summer programming with Compass, Beacon, and Sonic contracts. While some lauded last summer as a success for families, we saw it as a failure. We started planning summer camp in February, yet on April 13th was the first time that Summer Rising was announced, erasing all of our previous work plans. The city takes advantage of DYCD providers because we will do anything for the communities we serve and cannot say no to the changing rules of our contracts. It's enough. Last year's erratic guidance led to numerous staffing shortages, poor programming for children, and mass confusion for families. Our programs take intentional efforts to build relationships with our DOE partners on the ground, and this last-minute model pitted us against one another. At Cypress Hills, we had 10 Summer Rising contracts, and these were some of the things that we heard and experienced. We had 436 kids show up to a program that had barely enough staff for the 125 contracted participants. The city told us to make it work. I heard from a principal, why are they, DOE, DYCD, taking away fun from kids? We have been through too much. And at one of our other sites, a child said, I passed my classes, I signed up for summer camp, not summer school, and did not return to our programs. The city says that it cares about kids and families, so why don't we treat the professionals who serve this group with dignity and respect? The city says that they understand our frustrations, yet when we brought up how unsafe it was to allow any child and their family to show up on the first day of program without proper staffing, we were told we needed to push forward. Literally, the chat was turned off at virtual meetings with UICD because they could not process all of the issues that were getting raised regarding the safety, clearance, and staffing issues. After many post-summer focus groups and feedback requests, all in which I participated, DYCD held a meeting this last Wednesday, 2 days ago, that was supposed to give information about the summer. With the chat turned off, they gave us nothing about the model, nothing about funding per participant, and nothing about addressing the staffing concerns we have been lifting up all year. The worst is that we have this fight every year. Do you know how much time the city is wasting going back and forth with providers on these systemic issues? I could spend that time on working to retain staff year-round, effective planning, and providing consistency for families. We, along with other providers, have only been paid for Compass and Beacon. We are still waiting to get paid for last summer's slots for expansion and Sonic contracts. The continued instability and inadequate funding has prolonged a system-wide staffing shortage and is burning out the current workforce. If the city continues to perpetuate the nonprofit starvation cycle, the system will collapse. What can you do? You can fund programs early and adequately year-round. You can ensure that positive youth development is a primary focus of the summer programming. You can strengthen operational issues, have a coordinated office to manage regulatory issues, pair schools and CBOs in a thoughtful and intentional way, and set realistic enrollment targets and improve the processes. Ensure safe staffing, improve the fingerprinting and staff clearance process, and support children with individualized education plans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Derwin Green, you may now begin.
Thank you for your time this afternoon. Welcome, the opportunity to be here and share my voice with the rest of the who's going on this panel so far. My name is Derwin Green. I'm from the Kingsbridge Heights Community Center, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. And without taking too much time or reiterating what's already kind of been shared by my colleague who just went before me, just wanted to say that altruistically, while it was great, for an idea on theory for students to, like for summer programming last year to have the model where everyone is welcome to come and attend. We're not a one size fits all. Children are not clothing. We can't just run programming in a one size fits all when we know that some students are tactile, some students are verbal, some students need a various of different things in order to be able to function inside of one and a particular setting. And then on top of that, we were forced to be a second coming of the school year, like to do academic remediation. We weren't able to focus on any of the SEL work, the social emotional learning and the needs that the students may have had. I know for myself the number of PHQ-9, the mental health screenings that I've conducted, the class screenings that I've conducted with middle school and high school students, knowing that depression was a key trait thing that they were experiencing, but I could not address it because I had to be focused on the deliverables of the contract, which was very sad in some aspects because, wasn't able to, because I can see the need of the youth, but wasn't able to particularly address it because I was more focused on what I needed to do with the contract instead of the quality of the programming and meeting the needs of the students. Another thing that was raised was the fact of, having to run, we're running program now, and we haven't received funding for the work that we did last year. And that's a continuing, ongoing theme. And you'll hear that throughout the different times, throughout this testimony today, I'm pretty sure, from other CBOs. And we can't continue to operate like that. It's not realistic. We can't maintain staff that way. We're operating on the budgets, the rates that we're currently using are 8 years behind. They haven't been raised in 2014, but yet the cost of living in the city has gone up and we're not able to hold on to quality staff because of it. And as long as that continues to happen, we won't be able to run quality programming. And even just like last year, because of those two things coming together in the midst of the pandemic, we were already swamped, having to try to figure out how we're going to run programming in a socially distanced way, while it keeps everyone safe, while meeting the demand of everyone can apply and come into the building, knowing we can't physically take everyone in the building and knowing that some students needed IEPs, and we weren't able to find that out unless the families informed us themselves because the schools didn't share that information with us. So I just wanted to thank you for your time. I just wanted to bring up those few items. and I turn it back into the hands of the speaker.
Thank you for your testimony. I will now turn to Chair Stevens for questions and note that Councilmember Riley has his hand raised for the next round of questions. Chair Stevens.
I just want to acknowledge some of the council members who I didn't see on the last go around. We have Councilmember Richardson Jordan, we have Councilmember Osei, we have Councilmember Mealy, who's also here, and Councilmember Aviles. I don't have any questions as of now, but I do want to just say thank you for your service. I understand the work that you do and firsthand, and I understand your frustrations, and that is why we're here today, so we can work together to come together for a solution, because anyone who knows me knows I'm always about how do we make sure that our kids are getting everything that they deserve, and so this is a step in the right direction. I'll give it back to committee counsel so she can call my colleagues for questions.
Apologies. Councilmember Riley, I believe you have your hands raised.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Briggs. First and foremost, thank you to Chair Stevens. I couldn't think of anyone better to chair this committee. My question is really a comment and I guess a really quick question. Really excited to hear that the youth that got a chance to work in summer youth last year actually thought about some career paths. Did you ladies know that prior to you starting summer youth that you wanted to become educators, or did you learn that while you were doing the process? And the reason why I'm asking this is because we try to, I think I've been talking to Councilmember Stevens about this, of having career-provoked jobs for our youth. So we're just not putting them into summer camps. We're actually having them do jobs in the summertime that can actually possibly be future careers. So my question will be, did you guys know that you wanted to be educators prior to you going into summer youth?
I can answer.
Thanks.
You guys can hear me, right?
Yes,
Okay, so I had an interest, I was really confused with my career options. I wanted to be a nurse at one point and a teacher at another. So it was really conflicting, but I remember that my program from Learn and Earn, they had gave me opportunities, different career exploration. So you could be working at an ice cream shop, and one of them was tutoring. And I wanted to really see for myself if I really wanted to be a teacher. So I went through tutoring through a SIP in order to really get the experience and see if it was something that I could see myself doing. So to answer your question, I kind of did, but I kind of wanted to confirm it through SIP.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. That was the only question I had. Thank you.
Councilmember Osei, I see you have your hands raised.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chairwoman Stevens, for having this hearing here today. And I also do want to applaud, all the young people that are on this call, especially those that have testified. As the youngest council member in this new class, it's just, you hear often people talking about young people, but there's never young people in the room. So to see all of you here today is wonderful. I did want to ask one of you, whether it's Ms. Jang, Mr. Kova, or Mr. Ortega, how do you feel? Do you think the city has done a great job in terms of outreach when it comes to SYEP? And where do you think the city could do more in terms of getting the word out, especially as there's this large sum of investment being made into SYEP?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So, one, I just want to say, hey, how's everybody doing in the live stream? And two, hope everyone's having a good day. And three, for the SYEP, I feel as if we could do more in terms of getting more students, because yes, we have way more jobs now, 100,000 jobs coming in now. I feel like for us and you know, all of us learners, providers, I feel like one of the things that we can do as a community is reach out to other people that is having a hard time finding these type of opportunities. And so to participate in that and speak out and be the word for the youth. And you know, as I should say, my sisters currently they had did SYEP. My sister did SIP. They told me their experiences. They said it was like one of the best experiences they had. I'm currently gonna go into SIP this year, but for the people that don't have opportunity, the people that feel like as if there's no opportunity like that, there still is for ages 16 to 21, right? For those people that have no other way. You know, we should all like this stream. I'm really happy I'm here with you guys talking about this, because this stuff like this really matters. And one of the things is for young adults, right? What happens a lot is like we get to this point where, you know, we finish school and then we graduate and it's like, what's next, right? So with these programs is basically showing us like there could be a career in our grasp and our taking. It's just us to take it. And but yeah.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here today.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Richardson Jordan.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask a question around the sites themselves, and what students feel like makes some place an ideal site or an ideal location to be at. And I'm particularly asking as a council member who's interested in recruiting more sites and trying to find some local places that would want to take in, you know, SYEP students. So what really makes something an ideal place?
Am I able? Can you hear me? Sure, I guess I'll answer. At Kingsbridge, I guess the way it kind of starts is when the youth can kind of can tell us, like, the students typically come to us like they may need something, right? Like a student may say, I'm looking for, it could be wanting gym or college direction support services or just a place to hang out. And so what happens is that the kid may come in for whatever reason, but then what makes the students stay in is because of the relationship they may build with the staff and with the other students who may be in the programs. And so I think that's ultimately what ends up making the students stay is, like, you know, like the relationship they're building with the staff, and they see the particular organization or the space as being helpful to them. I guess one of the other students can speak better to it than me, because I'm an adult in the space, and so, like, I mean, that's typically the feedback that I get, is that they come to me for, like, maybe it's SAT prep, but why they may stay with me 2 or 3 more years is because of some other relationship that we've had, and I'm helping them to address some other need that they may not even know that they could get met there, or exposing them to something that they may not have been exposed to before, whether it's career options, college, or just, you know, social emotional support.
Thank you for your response. I see we have no other responses. I will now call on CM Aviles for her questions.
Time will begin.
Good afternoon. Oh, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair Stevens, for an exciting first hearing. I want to underscore my colleague Chiose to welcome and applaud the young people that are here today. It is great to hear your voice and your feedback on your experience last summer. And I just wanted to say, I wanted to express gratitude and thanks to everyone who worked this past summer in trying to do, you know, you did an incredible job with not a lot of resources in a short period of time and a lot of challenges. And yet you stepped up and tried to make the best for our young people and for our families. So I just wanted to extend more appreciation and thanks for that through the adversity, because I know our city and all of us individually are holding a great deal of trauma around what we have experienced over COVID. And so it's really important to offer grace and appreciation for all the trauma we're holding and yet still holding each other through it all. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Mealy?
Yes, I concur. I want to just say congratulations to our Chair Stevens and all the youth, because you are the future. And one thing I wanted to ask the program directors, if you're funding, because I remember with the seniors, they've been putting out their own funds. And have you completed your budget for the year 20? I guess I'm speaking to Mr. Green. He did speak on that. Have you completed your budget as of yet? And have you received any payment as of yet? Because if you do not receive the payments, I know programs, important programs like this will close because you're using your own budget. Could you talk to me in regards to that?
Sure. So
or anyone?
So I will say, since you asked me directly to answer the question, well, we continue as any other nonprofit organization having to rob Peter some time to pay Paul, that you're having to readjust your funds and reallocate funding from other programming areas, because obviously you had to, while we're waiting to get paid out, the work in the summer of 2021 was done, right? And so the employees who worked had to be paid, but obviously the money had to come from somewhere. If we have not been, we're still waiting to receive those funds. So thank God we've been working really hard about discretionary funds and being, as an organization to be able to do that. But you're right. Like, it may not be a program, but it could be a staff member that we had last year, we might not be able to have this year. And that's goes a big part, and that's connected to the question I was asked earlier about why students continue to come into the program. Maybe the staff member that you lost is connected to about 20 to 30 participants who've been coming because they've been having access to that particular person. Now that person is no longer there. Those students no longer feel vetted to coming into your program. Then your numbers go down. Then your funding gets slashed. And then it just becomes a trickle down effect. So that's basically how I can answer that question.
That's good, because I know these organizations are so important. I'm a product of the door. And if the door was not in place in the city, I don't know where I would be right now. So I commend all of you for taking up your time. I hope you got paid a little, but even if you didn't, it's worth more than you can ever imagine. So I salute you and I thank you, Chair. I hope we really start talking to contract in regards to making sure these organizations are whole, because if we do not, they will always be behind the 8 ball trying to catch up. And the more they keep trying to catch up, the more you will lose good people in your organization. So I thank everyone for being here. And thank you, Chair, for having this important first meeting. Congratulations.
Thank you for your testimony. I believe that we have all the questions asked by the council members. To the members of the public with their hands raised, please note that we will have time for additional public testimony later in the hearing. We will now be turning to our administrative testimony. During this portion of the hearing, I will call on the following members of the administration to testify. Valerie Mulligan, Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Connect. Susan Haskell, Deputy Commissioner for Youth Services. Associate Commissioners Darryl Rattray, Camille Joseph Barlek, Senior Advisor to the Chancellor. Carolyn Quintana, Deputy Chancellor of Division of Teaching and Learning Opportunities, and Daphne Montanez. I will deliver an oath to you all, and after reading the oath, I will call upon you to respond to the oath. Please raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before these committees, and to respond honestly to council member questions? Deputy Commissioner Valerie Mulligan.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Associate Commissioner Darryl Rattray.
Yes, I do. I do.
Thank you very much. Susan Haskell.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Jeez. Camille Joseph Varlak.
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Carolyn Quintana.
Yes, I do.
And finally, Daphne Montana.
I do.
Thank you. Deputy Commissioner Valerie Mulligan, you may now begin your testimony.
Chair Stevens and members of the Youth Services Committee, I am Valerie Mulligan, Deputy Commissioner for Workforce Connect at the New York City Department of Youth and Community Development. I am joined by Susan Haskell, Deputy Commissioner for Youth Services, and Associate Commissioners Dal Rattray and Daphne Montanez. I'm also accompanied by Carolyn Quintana, Deputy Chancellor of Teaching and Learning Opportunities at the New York City Department of Education, and Camille Joseph Varlak, Special Advisor to the Chancellor. Thank you for inviting us to speak today about summer program readiness. We appreciate that the members of that first panel took time today to share their experiences with us. Since this is our first hearing before this Youth Services Committee, we would like to provide a brief overview of our agency. DYCD's mission is to invest in a network of community-based organizations and programs to alleviate the effects of poverty and to provide opportunities for New Yorkers and communities to flourish. We contract with hundreds of nonprofit community-based organizations to operate a continuum of services that includes after-school, community centers, and youth workforce development programs, drop-in centers and residential programs for runaway and homeless youth, and fatherhood, immigration, literacy, and anti-poverty programs. Program sites are in neighborhoods all throughout New York City. All of us at DYCD look forward to working with you on behalf of the city's youth, families, and communities. We'll now move on to the topic of today's hearing, Summer 2022. As you know, on February 15th, Mayor Eric Adams announced a record 100,000 summer job opportunities for young people ages 14 through 24. 90,000 of these jobs and work-based learning experiences will be available through DYCD's Summer Youth Employment Program, making it the largest number of opportunities in the program's 60-year history. We were pleased to be joined by Speaker Adams, Chair Stevens, and other elected officials in celebrating this historic moment. The early timing of the announcement will allow our providers more time to prepare for a successful program. For the benefit of new committee members, we'd like to provide some background on SYEP. DYCD has administered the program since 2003 when the Council and the Bloomberg administration moved responsibility for youth employment programs to DYCD. Since then, DYCD has invested in a number of improvements to the program with a focus on expanding the ways in which youth benefit from the program. The most significant innovations include modernizing the program through the use of technology, embedding educational components into the model, including workplace readiness, financial literacy, health education, and career exploration, and targeting programming to meet the specific needs of youth through specialized services. With the support of the Council, we also launched the Work, Learn, and Grow program to serve youth during the school year. Last summer, SYEP provided career exploration opportunities and paid work experiences to 74,884 New York City young people at more than 14,000 work sites, the highest number of participants and work sites in the program's history. 91% of participants were from high needs neighborhoods, including those that have been most severely impacted by COVID-19. This was an incredible achievement as the city continued to battle the pandemic. Programming was carried out in person, fully remotely, or a hybrid of the two. These investments and innovations would not have been possible without the support of Council and our valued nonprofit providers. Over the last several months, we have shifted focus to planning for summer 2022. At the end of 2021, DYCD, in collaboration with the Mayor's Office of Youth Employment, conducted a series of focus groups with SYEP providers. In response to the provider feedback, DYCD has been working to address systemic challenges that have historically hindered program growth and quality. We are raring to go. The application period for SYEP opened earlier this week on DYCD's website. We are working with the business community to recruit employers of every size to participate in the program. We are pleased to have partnered with the Council in the past to serve as work sites and to hire our youth, and we look forward to doing so again this year. As research and experience have shown us time and time again, a summer job is a very positive and life-changing experience for a young person. We are deeply committed to making sure we have a robust summer youth employment program every year and look forward to our continued partnership with City Council to ensure its success. We'll now discuss summer programming at camps. As you may know, last summer we launched Summer Rising, a comprehensive summer program during a critical time for New York City students. Summer Rising provided opportunities for young people to learn to get outside and to engage with peers and caring adults in safe, supervised, and enriching, robust programs and to ready them for a return to in-person school in September 2021. The initiative brought together DYCD-funded summer enrichment initiatives and DOE's academic programs into a singular experience for young people, particularly those from communities hardest hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. K-8 students were connected to academic classes, enrichment programming, including field trips, arts activities, and outdoor recreation, and daily social emotional learning activities. Programs followed rigorous health and safety protocols, including social distancing and mask wearing. Summer 2022 will offer a new opportunity to engage youth and families in joyful skill-building activities, bringing together the strengths of DYCD-funded enrichment initiatives and DOE's academic programs into a coordinated experience for young people. While it's too early to discuss plans for this summer in detail, we're looking at what worked well and what needs to be improved this year. The program's evaluation, which included focus groups and provider surveys, demonstrated multiple benefits to youth and families. They included access to a safe environment and childcare, improvement in social skills, health and well-being, and preparation for youth to return to school. We've also heard from CBOs and other stakeholders who have made recommendations related to program funding and scale, stronger coordination with the Department of Health and Mental Hygiene and DOE on regulatory issues, staff background checks, fingerprinting, and school matches with CBOs, streamlined enrollment process, and support for youth with individualized education plans. We are taking all of these recommendations seriously as we develop plans for the summer. We look forward to working with you to offer young people a high-quality summer experience. Thank you again for this opportunity to testify today. We appreciate your strong commitment to New York City's youth, and we would be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Given that the other panelists will be here for support and answering questions, Chair, I will now turn to you for your questions.
Thank you, and thank you for your testimony, Commissioner Valerie, Deputy Commissioner Valerie. Okay, so due to the pandemic and our handling of its works, working parents are bearing the disproportionate burden when it comes to childcare, primarily women. There are thousands of children and parents across the city that are currently on wait lists for much needed after-school services. CBO providers of DYCD funded programs have hired staff, and there is an unprecedented backlog of clearances to be processed by DOH, OFC, OCFS. Some have been employed for over a year. This severely limits the capacity of the program. How are you guys helping and supporting providers to get this done? And what is your plan for the summer?
Thank you, Councilmember, for that question. I'd like to turn that over to Deputy Commissioner Haskell to address.
Thanks, Valerie. And I know my colleague, Daryl, has been working specifically on the clearance issue. Daryl, feel free to chime in if you want to. Clearances, these are regulations that come down from the state through New York City Department of Health, DYCD's efforts to coordinate and help expedite those is to stay in very close communication with our partners at Department of Health. I believe there's been some recent talks about how to do better support this spring and this summer. The comprehensive background clearance, which was a new requirement in 2019, it really, it was significantly increased the background responsibilities on CBO staff. And it has been a big burden for the community to bear when thinking about hiring staffing needs. I know we're working on some things. Daryl, do you have anything specific we can share here in the hearing?
Not specific, but we are working with DOE and DOHMH now looking at what this protocol and process looks like for the upcoming summer. In addition to the current backlog, so everyone knows that we've been dealing with a backlog or somewhat of a backlog of clearances as well. It's my knowledge that DOHMH has hired additional staff to support clearances, but I would certainly request that you reach out to them to get details on the number of staff hired to support clearances. But it's something that we know is very important. We've been dealing with this for some time, and we're looking to streamline it.
Thank you for those answers, but I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. Who on the team can providers on staff directly reach out to? Is that Daryl? I want to make sure that we are like putting some point people in. What's the time frame and what is the city's commitment on getting these background checks taken? Because I mean, I know we're like, oh, we can just kind of push it off, but I would love for us to kind of just like pinpoint, like, who could they reach out to? How can we support? And how can we get the city to commit to working with DOH to get this done? Do we have contacts in DOH we can make sure that folks have access to, because people aren't being cleared, and especially with this turnaround for camp and SYP, it's going to be dire strength to be able to get staff cleared.
So Chair Stevens, absolutely. So I guess threefold. One, for the backlog, providers, and some have already been reaching out to me. We've been liaising with DOHMH, and they've been talking and trying to alleviate some of that backlog and clearances. But providers can certainly reach out to me for the backlog. And then we can walk them through the steps of like, all right, what information does DOHMH need? And then put them in communication with each other. Two, for the summer programming, we're speaking with DOHMH now on our approach. And I would say in the next few weeks, we'll have some information for providers and for everyone on how that's going to roll out and be supportive, so we're not running into the same issues as last year. And then three, I can check to see who from DOHMH folks can reach out to. But again, if they reach out to me directly and we get the information that we need, I'll definitely put them in contact with the right person.
Thank you very much. So last summer, DYCD and DOH Summer Rising initiative was successful in many ways, but the success to be due to relying on CBOs and school administrations to turn water into wine. As our city always seems to do, providers described the rollout as horrific. Right before the launch, our former mayor announced publicly that every child will have a slot. CBO providers were sounding the alarms from the beginning that they did not have the capacity to meet the demand. Principals and CBOs were getting information and having meetings independently of each other. During the first week, it was widely reported that programs were facing angry parents due to the mayor's promises. There were widespread reports of glaring safety concerns of our children being and leaving and arriving without accountability, and many not even being on their rosters. Why did this happen?
Chair Stevens, I wanted to also say welcome, and it's really good to be here with the Youth Services Committee before I dig into that answer. Even as you say, talk about those things, and we're thinking about them here at DYCD every day. The emotion from that experience can come up. Nothing was typical about last spring, and listening to some of our community-based organization staff talk about those challenges, we absolutely agree. We are focused right now on the roughly 60,000 summer enrichment seats that are planned in our baseline contracted program. But even as we speak with our colleagues about potential expansion and how to better coordinate with Department of Education, there's no one who wants to repeat that situation from summer 2021, where we had an unlimited commitment, which resulted in more young people than really providers were capable of handling coming in late date into the program. We will not repeat that in summer 2021. Again, nothing was typical, and I think the commitment of the city, which did have some amazing elements to it. There was so much good programming happening on the ground. Again, all thanks to the community-based providers, we were able to serve more young people than ever before at a time when young people probably needed it more than ever. As I said, we're not going to repeat that. We're not going to repeat that situation this year, and I commit to that.
Okay, so what are you doing to ensure that that's not going to happen again, other than the commitment?
Well, I think again, we're focused right now on our baseline contracted programs, and we're working to talk to our colleagues at Department of Education and City Hall to think about what additional summer experiences could be made available. Whatever that may be, it won't include an unlimited commitment to an undefined period of time in other words, enrollment deadline, we would not repeat that experience in 2022. First of all, we know we did that last year and we learned some really hard lessons, and I take all the feedback that has come already in this hearing. So we have a lot of experience to build off of. You learn the things that you don't want to repeat, and we have a lot of good ideas about how to go forward for summer 2022.
Thank you. What is the agency plan for the summer program model? Will services be provided in person? Is there going to be a hybrid? Is there going to be a combination of the two? Because we're getting a lot of feedback that program providers still have no guidance on what summer programming will look like.
Okay, that's a good question. Beginning in September of, actually really beginning in the summer of 2021, our services began being delivered in person. We deliver in-person services. Like you say, childcare is an equity issue. Families need in-person services. And then coming into the fall with the return to in-person school, again, after school programming in person. That we'll follow that again in summer 2022, where the model is, we have a full-time childcare model for elementary school students. We currently contract for roughly 108 hours for a middle school model. And we're looking at all that. We are absolutely planning for in-person services.
How many participants will providers be expected to serve this summer? How does this compare to the current system capacity, and what steps will the city take to expand any capacity this summer?
Well, at this time, we are planning for, at this time, we're committed to roughly 60,000, more than 60,000 really, young people to be in summer enrichment programs in schools, in community centers, and in other settings.
Okay. Is summer program going to be for students enrolled in summer school, or is it going to be open to everyone? And if yes, is the plan for students who are, what is going to be the plan for students who are not in summer school if it's only for summer school students?
DYCD program is open. DYCD programming for K-8 is open enrollment with our community-based organizations. We welcome students who are in DOE schools, students who go to other kinds of schools. We are open. And on top of that, the Department of Education has a commitment to students are mandated for summer school, and that happens year after year. That will continue to happen this year. We will try to coordinate as we have in the past, and I think probably more strongly this summer than ever before, to get services to young people who do have mandated summer school so that they can experience the best of both worlds, their mandated summer school experience and participation in some truly fun and exciting enrichment activities.
Do we know what the rate providers will be paid this summer?
Our current contract rates, yes, we know what those rates are. I believe it's a range for elementary school students between $800 and $1,088, and it's a $600 base contract amount for middle school students. We looked at that range last spring and we made adjustments, and we are right now we're just working on the base. We do look forward to sharing additional information in the coming weeks around summer.
Do we know what schools providers will be in this summer? And when, and if not, when will providers expect it to know? When will they know?
Every summer, we work really closely with Department of Education, looking at where our baseline programs are, taking into consideration where summer school needs to happen, where construction is going to happen, and aiming to open up as many buildings as possible, taking into consideration geographic diversity, and we will continue that process this summer as we do year after year.
But do you have like a date when providers could know? Because I've been there where we've literally found out 2 days before camp or 2 days before programming what school would be in.
Chair Stevens, that's not acceptable. We will alert programs about where their locations will be as soon as possible, that late notification really makes it super challenging for anybody to notify parents about where they're going to be located, to let staff know, to even recruit staff. So a lot of people who go to a job like to know where their job is going to be. So we are committed to early notification on school buildings.
I agree. Do you want to commit to a date?
I'd like to get back to you on that.
Okay. Providers express concerns that agencies do not communicate programming models early enough to enable adequate programming. Does the agency plan to address this issue, and how so? And I just want to remind us that we're already in March and they have still not gotten their plans. So that is kind of a trick question. Just wanted to point that out.
I missed the beginning. It was about early notification on something. I didn't hear the first part
On
of
the
the
program
question.
model and program makeup.
Okay, like schedule and hours and that kind of thing, or
Just the program. I mean, I think we're hearing that program providers still don't even know what they're expected to do this summer.
Well, again, we're focused on our baseline summer programming, which really hasn't changed in a long time. So for providers who do have baseline programming right now, the model, again, it's a full-time childcare model for elementary school students. It has been a partial schedule for middle school students, really focused on enrichment and a little less of a childcare in the past. So we are looking at whether there could be enhancements to that model. And if there are, we know that we need to share that, soon.
We're hearing that providers have long wait lists. And what are some other options for parents who might be on a wait list? Do we notify them to let them know that there's other programs and giving them options, especially because we want to make sure that we are providing services to parents who are in need? So how are we notifying parents who might be on a wait list and getting them into actual programs?
That's a good question. Parents and families can apply to our portal, Discover DYCD. Encourage everybody to check out Discover DYCD. It'll show where all the range of programs that DYCD supports are, and it allows you to apply right there in the system. If you're on a wait list, you should get a message back from a provider and you can apply to other programs. So we could encourage families to contact DYCD if they want to get some information about where there might be a seat available, because just because one program is really filled up doesn't mean there's not a program down the block that could accommodate them.
I have a follow-up question, because I know before you said that the baseline programs, they're going to be the same as they usually are. So I just want to make sure we clarify that that means that they're not going to be using the model that they used last year, which around the summer rising. So they're going back to the baseline regular programming.
No, I'm not prepared to say that we're not going to make enhancement to the program, because we are deep in planning for thinking about how we might add to the baseline summer program plans that we have right now. So yeah, we're definitely deep in planning about what additional resources we could bring to young people. All I can say at this point is that providers are aware of their baseline contract commitments.
So I just want to go on record again for saying, I think that makes it very difficult for providers when we're in March and they still don't have clear knowledge or understanding what's being asked of them, because if you're planning, that means that you haven't gotten that information to them. So I think that that's where the difficulties and confusion is coming in at. I want to move on to asking some questions about like cornerstones and community centers. Are all NYCHA community centers cornerstone programming?
No, they're not. Currently, we have 99 NYCHA community centers that are cornerstones, but we know there's other real estate within NYCHA that are community centers that are not cornerstones.
Okay. If NYCHA community centers are not cornerstone, how does the community have access to the community center?
If the non-cornerstone sites?
Because I know in the cornerstone contract, it typically comes with obligations to work with the community. How in some of those sites who are not cornerstone, how does the community have access to the community center?
We also have about 14 campus programs that operate within cornerstone sites. For the non-DYCD funded NYCHA communities, I just realized what I said, I'm sorry. We also have about 14 campus programs that operate in NYCHA community centers. They're separate than the cornerstones. And then for the non-DYCD funded NYCC community centers, it depends on what's there. Like I imagine if there is a program operating out of that center, they may have some rules around how they recruit young people, young adults for their programs. But it might be a question for NYCC to get a sense of how many non-DYCD funded programs are actually operating, and then what the total number of centers that are out there. I know, of course, some are DFTA programs as well.
Okay, so thank you. We are investing hundreds of millions of dollars in cities' tax levy dollars into the proven and much needed programs. Why are CBO providers on the DYCD end and not school administrators on the DOE being held accountable to meet regularly and work together?
If I understand your question, it's well, I follow up if I'm not hitting the mark here, but
I can say it again.
Yeah.
So basically we're asking DYCD and DOE work together, but there's no obligation or mandate for them to actually work together or plan together. So the question is asking, why does DYCD providers get held accountable for certain outcomes, but not DOE? So we're trying to get to why they're not working together.
I mean, I think we are working more closely together than we ever have in the past at the agency level. I see Valerie nodding, I see Daryl nodding, and I want to express, like, I see Carolyn nodding. I want to say, as one indicator of that, we have two very senior DOE leadership joining this call today so that they can also hear your questions and concerns and from council. And we have been in contact daily, many times a day. So we do hold ourselves accountable to good communication and collaboration and planning. And we want to make sure that the community-based organizations on the ground have support to meet with their principals and their school leadership team. If DOE wants to weigh in, if I have missed something here, please do. But I would say we are accountable, and we want to be accountable for that level of collaboration, both on the ground at a school site and between our agencies.
Okay. I think sometimes it becomes very, very wonky because CBOs often are held to a different standard, but I think we need to think about how are we going to actually have on the ground folks working together in a different way, because I think at the top there might be some communication happening, but sometimes on the ground that's not happening. So I think we really need to be thinking about how are we putting systems in place so that can happen more collaboratively and more fluently, because I can tell firsthand that's not always necessarily the case. The next question I have is, CBOs and school-based after schools and Beacon Community Center providers are regularly told by DYCD that they need to persuade the whole school principal to meet and work with them on the ground, and there is a range of outcomes. Despite the practices, CBOs providers are largely ignored by the whole school administrators. What's the plan to hold just administrators accountable going forward? Let's start with Summer. Will they be asked to meet once a month with CBOs to complete a planning tool every month? And will there be joint deadlines and action steps? How will DYCD work with DOE to facilitate that?
There were some good ideas embedded in that question. We released, a couple of weeks ago, we released some professional development opportunities already for summer, focused on serving students with special needs and CBO, definitely CBO school personnel collaboration. So we want to make sure that we're offering supports so that no one is doing it alone, that principals aren't out there alone and feeling frustrated, and that community-based organization leadership isn't left out there alone and frustrating. So we are offering opportunities for support with that collaboration to develop, let's say, the school partnership agreement, like one of the foundations for our thinking between leadership on the ground level about how to work together. I don't know, Daryl, anything you want to add to that?
The relationship within a school building between the provider and the school administration within the building is important. We know that. We know where it's working. That's the best practice. A lot of really meaningful things are happening for young people. Once in a while, there are hiccups that happen. We get involved as well. So we have meetings. We talk to our counterparts at DOE. We speak with superintendents. We have meetings on the ground to try to mediate that situation or whatever it may be. But it's something that we are thinking constantly about on how to improve that.
Yes, I just wanted to add, Chair Stevens. Hi, I'm Carolyn Quintana, Deputy Chancellor for Teaching and Learning. Maybe an upside, I'm not sure. Wasn't part of summer last year, but heard a lot about it and got to read all of the feedback and the playbook that was put together, and have worked very closely with Daryl and Susan and folks at DYCD and City Hall on this planning. And one of the things that Susan started to allude to was the technical assistance guide that already went out. We're also planning professional development together. We want to make sure that the folks who are in the schools are working as collaboratively as we are, and we're taking advantage of the fact that we are planning already, so that we can offer some of those opportunities in the spring. And we've also talked about other ways that we can engage the schools together even once the program starts, so that there's familiarity and even opportunities to convene groups. So thank you for that question. Really, really important. And I'm glad, that you're pointing out that not just for us to have that collaboration, but incredibly important for the schools to feel that way too, because to the parents and students, we don't matter. And the experience is the same no matter who's offering it. They just want to know that it is a safe, welcoming, cohesive program. And so we need to make sure that we're doing that together. So thank you. And thank you for the ideas that were embedded in that question too.
Absolutely. Thank you. So I have a few more questions. I'm going to ask some more questions and I'm going to let my colleagues ask and then I'll come back. But I just wanted to ask some questions around, has DYCD been actively recruiting employers to participate in SYEP for summer 2022?
Yes, thank you for that question, Chair. One of the things that we heard loud and clear from all of the feedback that we've been soliciting from providers is that they need support recruiting employers. And I can speak firsthand in saying that everybody from City Hall down to the staff on my team is really engaged in a comprehensive employer engagement strategy this summer to help us get to the goal of 90,000 for DYCD and 100,000 jobs across the city. So that is everything from having senior folks at City Hall reaching out to business leadership councils, to working with SBFs to reach out to small businesses, to bids, to tap into their industry partners. We've been having collaborative conversations with every city partner who will hear us out, and we've had a ton of momentum much earlier this year than ever before, because the entire city has been activated to know that this is a goal and that recruiting employers is the critical piece to make this happen for young people.
Thank you. In employment programs such as SYEP, how are students matched with their employment work sites? Are participant interests, goals, and experience considered?
Yes, absolutely. That's part of the work that the providers are doing on the ground. And it's really the important role that they play, because they're the ones getting to know our young people, and they're the ones who are directly working with the employers to onboard them and do the matching. So we are always encouraging our providers to make sure they're taking youth interest to heart. I was very heartened to hear the young people who spoke in the panel, who all referenced that they got a career exploration experience that matched something that they wanted to explore. I think that's amazing. The other thing that we've been working really hard on is how to wrap around the SYEP experience with other educational opportunities that help young people match what they're doing to the career exploration component. So if you're placed in a summer camp, how do we help you think about what that means and what that pathway might look like for a career in education or for a career in nonprofit? How do we help you understand how the leadership skills that you're gaining through any placement that you're in relate to the job that you might want to have in the future? So it's sort of a approach from up here at DYCD, providing those wraparound services, and on the ground working with the providers to understand the young people's interests and make sure that they're being responsive to them.
Yeah, I was very heartened to, I love that these young people got a pathway as well. And that was something that was really great. But I also have had experiences where young people did not have that same experience. So I think that we should definitely be thinking about how are we ensuring that all providers are taking young people's interests and experiences into consideration and thinking about what are some systems we can put into place to kind of help and support that. Another question I have is, does DYCD and program providers collect information on services that young people and families need when applying for summer programs? So that's SYP, summer camp. Are we collecting other information that we might need? Like, do they need housing support? Do they need food help? Do they need help with like job development? Are we collecting other data that might help us actually move things forward for families?
Thank you, Counselor. That's a really great question. I'm looking at my colleagues to say if you all have thoughts as well. I know that we do have an application that collects information from all our young people on income and helps assess some of their needs. I'm not sure how much we, across the board are incorporating that. Susan, Daryl, Daphne, any thoughts to add?
I know we collect information about whether people need health insurance as one example. I think we do some of that, and then I think our providers do even more of that and once they're engaged with families on the ground. But in terms of DYCD's data collection, we do that on a limited basis.
Yeah, I would think that we would start thinking about, because a lot of our providers also provide other services. And so how are we making sure that when we're collecting data, that it's meaningful data, right? Like, I think sometimes some of the information we collect isn't that meaningful, but we need things like, how do you get food support and things like that? So I think that that's something that we should definitely start thinking about. The next question I have is, why are younger youth being only paid $700 for the entire summer? This seems unfair and leaves younger people vulnerable to negative influences. Is there a way to, is there ways for us to expand and increase it to at least $1,000 for the summer?
So the younger youth model for 14 and 15-year-olds was developed as part of the last RFP out of a really deliberate attempt to have scaffolded programming that's thoughtful about meeting young people where they are, right? We know SYP can't be one size fits all. An experience for a 22-year-old is not the same experience that we should be providing for a 14 or 15-year-old. So that was the goal. This summer, we're planning to maintain that same model and the same funding structure. That said, this is something that we are constantly evaluating and definitely are committed to being really thoughtful about it going forward as we plan longer term, especially gearing up towards a newer RFP to see if the model has worked, if it's meeting those goals, and of course also to assess the way that we're paying the young people, and if there's a barrier there that we need to be considering.
I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'll open it up for my colleagues, and then I'll have a couple more questions after them. But what kind of support are you giving providers as they are expanding and accommodating the additional slots for SYP this summer?
Sure. I could speak about this forever because I hope the providers have been telling you that we have been working really hard to enhance the support that we're providing as we gear up for this summer. So this looks like all sorts of things. The first is definitely that employer engagement support that I was just talking about. We heard loud and clear that that was #1 priority for them. But we've also been working behind the scenes on a number of operational things. So things like shifting the way that we let providers do their budgets to make it easier for them to be more flexible with their funding across their contracts so that they can be more creative in how they hire and utilize the funds that we give them. The fact that their baseline funding was made available and their program model was given to them earlier than ever before this year is huge. We've released the application earlier. We're working on behind the scenes things like creating sort of an audit manual, which providers have been asking for a very long time, so that they're not spending so much time afraid of DYCD, but really understanding what we need from them, what the oversight of the program looks like. And then, of course, the more soft stuff, we have a whole series of trainings planned. We have a series of, back and forth conversations with providers, with folks as high up as City Hall, so that they're hearing the feedback too, so that we're constantly assessing what's going on the ground. The next one of those meetings is scheduled for a couple of weeks from now. So all sorts of things, from just constant communication with the providers to trainings to resources to employer engagement, and then all of the back end operational stuff that really makes it easier for them to do the work on the ground.
I'll open it up for my colleagues to ask some questions, and I'll come back after they're done.
Thank you, Chair. I will now call on council members in the order in which they have used the Zoom raise hand function. Council members, please keep your questions to 5 minutes, including time for the witness's response. The Sergeant at Arms will keep a timer to let you know when your time is up. I will now take questions from Council Members Riley, followed by Council Member Williams and Council Member Osei.
Your time will begin.
Councilmember Riley, you may begin.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, again, and thank you to the panel. My first question is, I know that we were discussing the rollout, 100,000 jobs. Is there any process on contracts being given to new community-based organizations? Or what is the procedure now that we're actually going to be, hiring 25,000 more youth, but there are still a low number of providers out there willing to hire them? So is there any process right now that we're thinking about doing?
So we have an RFP from 2019. We're still working with that RFP in our existing portfolio of providers. Long term, we definitely want to look at bringing new providers into the fold, but it's not something that we can do for this summer. That said, I do want to reiterate that the goal, the size of the goal, was established in really close collaboration with the providers. So this is what our current portfolio of providers is telling us that they can do this summer. So that number wasn't pulled out of a vacuum.
Okay. My next question is back to the RFP that you were discussing, the $700 that were given to our youth. It's not really a question, it's really a comment. I just want to kind of emphasize what Chair Stevens was reiterating. If we really want to engage our youth and want them to be engaged in summer youth, how can we really do our best to kind of give them more money that they're getting paid? Because I don't know if you guys are realizing our youth are wearing jeans now that are costing $700. So this is not really appealing to them to come to a job that they have to work the entire summer, especially if we're trying to gear them away from, going into the life of crime, doing anything illegal to get any more funds or anything that, wouldn't be too appealing. So just a comment with that is if we could really, work on, extending that incentive from 700 to at least 1,000. Even if we could forward it up to 1,200, that would be amazing. And I guess my last question will go out to Summer Rising. The planning for Summer Rising kind of took place really late last year. It was really bad. The rollout, it was so bad that I was bringing my daughter. I had to pick my daughter up one day really early from school to go to the dentist, and they actually brought me another child. That wasn't my daughter, which was really scary because if it wasn't me and was somebody else, that child could have been taken away and God knows what would have happened. So moving forward, are we doing any planning for Summer Rising to make sure that we don't have any bumps in the road coming up this summer? And that would be all. That's my last question. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say 100%. First of all, I'm so sorry that experience happened to you. That is not a typical experience in our programs at all. I acknowledge what some of our community-based organization partners on the call said, that last year was not typical, and it did get a bit chaotic. We will not repeat that experience in summer 2022. We absolutely will not, because we're doing the planning right now and because we're going to have boundaries and parameters around the program that would prevent, for example, young people showing up at a program that are unanticipated, where providers don't have adequate safety information about those young people, and who their approved pickups are, whether they're okay to walk home alone. We will not repeat those experiences.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Chair. I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Councilmember Williams, you may now begin your questions.
Time will begin.
Hello, and thanks so much, Chair Stevens, and DYCD and DOE for being here. So as a summer youth employment worker for many, many years, and then also a field supervisor for the SYEP program through DYCD. I have had a lot of personal experiences visiting sites, and then again, also being a summer youth employment worker. And I just wanted to know what type of accommodations are we making for students who may not be able to go into a work site. I know COVID-19 is still a thing and we're still wrestling with reasonable accommodations, but was just wondering what type of accommodations are you making for certain folks, some of our young folks who might need it.
Thank you. That's a great question. So this summer, as we did last summer, we'll be offering job opportunities that can be in person, fully remote, or hybrid. And the providers are going to be working with the young people to assess where along that spectrum of opportunity they want to be. I don't know, Daphne, if you had anything you wanted to add to that.
Hi, sorry, I was muted. No, that's exactly right. I think in response to where we were last summer, we knew that many work sites were not fully in person themselves. There was also some hesitancy from youth about being in in-person settings. So we allowed our youth to, and in collaboration with our employers, to develop job experiences that were both either remote or in person or a hybrid of the two. And we will continue to offer that flexibility this year as well.
Awesome. And just a follow-up question. So we know the digital divide is also a problem. And so for our young folks who might have trouble accessing the internet, is DYCD thinking about ways to support those young folks? And then just another separate and aside question, back to being a field supervisor, with the increased number of young folks that will be able to employ, I am assuming while some sites might be virtual and or hybrid, we might have an increased number of sites. And so wanting to know, if you all have been building the capacity to properly manage the sites.
Sure. So yes, we absolutely are being mindful of making sure that young people have the technology that they need to participate in the program, whether that be partnering again with our DOE colleagues who are on this call to ensure that they have that equipment, or if we need to provide it, we work with our providers to make sure that they have the resources. For your first question, your second question, I'm forgetting what it was.
Just if you're like really building the capacity to like properly manage the sites as a like site supervisor. I remember having a whole bunch of sites to manage and get to, and now we're talking about increasing potentially the number of sites. And then there's this weird hybrid situation. So like, just making sure that you all are wanting to know what your thought process strategy is for increasing capacity around site management.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're working with our nonprofit providers to make sure that they have the resources that they need to be able to staff up appropriately. Some of that is happening through these like administrative things that we're doing on the back end to free up budgeting. Working in partnership with OMB, we made sure that there was startup funding available in the budgets for the providers to really have this expansion be.
I'm sorry, Deputy Commissioner. I guess maybe a clarifying question. Does DYCD no longer hire temporary site supervisors?
Oh, the DYCD supervisor. And yes,
that's what I'm talking about.
I'm
talking about DYCD site supervisors.
Absolutely. We will be hiring those as well. We have funding and we've been working with OMB to bring additional site supervisors on board.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear questions from Councilmember Osei.
Thank you again. Good afternoon, everyone again. And thank you again, Chairwoman Stevens, for allowing me to ask another question. I would love to learn more about how the department is engaging their outreach to ensure more youth, especially youth of color, are aware of these jobs. My sister is 14 years old and she's about to turn 15 in a couple months, and she does not know what SYEP is. Of course, I've told her, but I'm sure that there are other people in her age bracket that are still not aware of what SYEP is, but would love to engage in it. How is the agency making sure that the outreach is youth-friendly and engaging to youth? Has the agency utilized popular social media platforms like TikTok or Instagram to do this outreach? And also, has the agency worked with youth organizations to make sure our youth are aware of these opportunities?
Thank you, Councilmember. That's a great question. So, you know, we do this in all sorts of ways. Absolutely, DYCD uses all sorts of social media platforms to get the word out, you know, from LinkedIn, Instagram, across Facebook, across the board.
TikTok?
I don't know. Are we on TikTok, Daphne? I'll have to get back to you with from our social media team who does that.
I also don't know how many young people are on LinkedIn, so we should probably.
I don't know how many young people are on. Not that many young people use Instagram that much either yet. Just to know.
Absolutely. But, you know, it's much more than that, right? So our providers are the ones on the ground really actively recruiting the young people, and we definitely provide them with resources to help do that recruitment. The other thing is this year, especially as we've highlighted over and over again, our partnership with DOE, that's a big piece of it. They have committed and have been really thoughtful about how they can blast this to superintendents, to principals, and so that the word is really trickling down to the students on the ground from schools, from providers who are in the community. And just to say, the application opened 4 days ago, and we have over 25,000 applications in the system already. So I'm really confident that the word is getting out there. I'm really excited to see those application numbers. I think that's a really strong start for us. So I hear you. I think it's really important that we're reaching young people where they are, and we're trying really hard to do that. Would definitely love more ideas that you might have about how we can continue to improve the way that we're reaching out.
Absolutely. And I do have another question. You know, SYEP can be a great avenue for youth to explore a career path, as we all do know, and set a foundation that invests in our future leaders in climate change, tech, science, the arts, and government. How does the agency determine the types of SYEP jobs that are available?
Sorry, say the question again. You broke up a second.
Yes, I said, how does the agency determine the types of SYEP jobs that are available? For example, how many SYEP jobs are environmental related? How many jobs are government related? How many are STEM related or cultural related?
Sure. I'll start, and then I definitely want to turn it over to Daphne, who leads our employer engagement efforts. We have an all hands on deck approach to employer engagement because we need every single sector at the table. So, and the more sectors that we have at the table, the better able we are to reach, to do what we were talking about earlier in terms of matching young people with careers that they're interested in. So Daphne, I don't know, do you want to talk through some of the ways that we do this?
Yes, absolutely. You know, we know that our young people, with the numbers that we serve, they have a wide variety of interests in terms of careers, or even wanting an opportunity to get exposed to options that they may not even be aware of. So over the years, we've worked really intentionally on broadening the number of opportunities that we bring to our participants, but also looking to broaden the industries that we work with. We went in 2014, we were at 28% in private sector placements, and last year we were up to 42%. And we expanded our placements in technology and financial services and professional services, real estate, and we're certainly going to be doubling down on those efforts once again through some of the methods that Valerie had shared previously. And it's all hands on deck, you know, from the administration at City Hall to folks here at DYCD, and of course with all of your help as well, looking at not only private sector placements, but small businesses locally in the community, to our own city agencies, where we know a number of our young people are very civically engaged and civic minded, and we have wonderful opportunities for young people to get engaged in the public sector.
Yep. And
Thank you both.
Councilmember Osei, if I may just add,
Sure.
hi again, Carolyn Quintana from New York City Public Schools. The chancellor brought on this year a chief of
Time's
career
expired.
pathways. And she was able to make connections already. We are working with the mayor's office, who has some, I don't know what the actual name of it, but a corporate council that they've put together, and together with DYCD as well, to make sure that we have more opportunities for students and have broadened some of those opportunities, so that they are expanded beyond what we've been able to offer, including partnerships with colleges to continue the tutoring core kind of work that the students had attested to earlier today.
Thank you. Thank you, the three of you, for answering my questions.
Thank you all for your responses. We are drawing near to the end of our first round of questions. I will call on Councilmember Aviles next, and then I will call on council members who would like to ask a second round of questions. Please keep your questions to 2 minutes, including the witnesses' responses, and the Sergeant at Arms will keep a timer and will let you know when your time is up. Councilmember Aviles, you are still on your first round, so you have the original time slot, but any other council members, please raise your hand, and then we will move on to the chair's second round.
Time will begin.
Great, thank you so much. Thanks again, Chair Stevens, and everyone for being here. I represent District 38 in South Brooklyn. That includes the communities of Sunset Park and Red Hook. A good portion of our community are undocumented young people. I was elated to hear the 100,000, ambitious SYP goal for our young people across New York City. I don't quite consider that universal because we know there's more than that. However, a great first step. But I know because of funding challenges, it completely left out undocumented young people, of which we have a great many. So I'd love to hear how the agency is not only outreaching to undocumented people, but what plans do they have to make sure that they're engaged in both employment opportunities and summer programming.
Thank you, Councilmember, for this question. It's a really good question. It's something that I think we are all struggling with because, as you know, it's really hard to tackle given all of the regulations and sort of funding challenges around employment programs for undocumented young people. I can say, I can't speak too much in detail about this because it's not under my purview, but I do know some of those additional 10,000 slots are going to programs that are going to be available to any young person in certain DOE schools. So we're hoping to reach out through those channels, but it is a challenge, and I think long-term something we really are focused on solving, but I right now don't have, the perfect answer for you, but I hear you. It's something really important to us, and hope more to come soon.
I guess, well, I appreciate that. I know there have been programs, small scale programs to figure out how to reach these students. So we have models. It's the question of, are we prioritizing pursuing those models and ensuring if we have private sector employees. I was speaking particularly to Maimonides, who I know is a big employer of SYEP students, around how could they prioritize and do both, right? Do a more traditional model that has the kind of funding restrictions and do something additional as a private sector employee. So I think part of the ask also is, how do private sector employees step up or step into this space through a stipended program that makes it allowable? And we know that these students are also the students who are working off the books because there's great economic need in their families. These are often the most vulnerable families because they're mixed status across the board. So thank you for that work. I will keep asking how that is progressing. I guess it's interesting. I'm glad to see the breakdown in the increases. We'll note 14% of the public sector placement. Shame on us. We need to significantly expand our presence of employing our young people because we offer quite an incredible range across New York City. So that would be an internal goal that we as public sector employ our young people and provide this awesome array of experience. So I hope we will significantly expand that number. I guess also I'd like to know a little bit about, I had a Ladders for Leaders. Obviously, many of you know I was chair of the youth board, and I employed a Ladder for Leader, and she was fabulous, and I loved the program. And one problem we had was they did not get access to any transportation support over the summer. So with the modest amount that they were earning, they also had to pay for their fare for transportation. So I don't know if transportation is also being considered for these young people, because it is quite a significant burden on a limited payment. So is that something that is being considered?
Yes, thank you for the question. So it's certainly something that we know has been an issue and a challenge for young people participating in the program. We haven't solved it just yet, but I can say, and I'm looking at some of my DOE colleagues, that we have been talking about whether we can work together to try to provide some sort of solution to this. We're not there yet, but hopefully I'll have an update for you. That's
great.
positive.
And I guess I know I'm close to time, but I would love to talk also about what the outreach opportunities and what the outreach looks like for students and families of English language learners, and how you're addressing that across your summer programs with students who may not be fluent in English and have that particular challenge. And students with IEPs, we know that was a huge challenge for Summer Rising. It is a consistent challenge for families and immigrant families in our district with children with IEPs who are English language learners. They fall through the cracks across the board on many, many programs. So I would love to know how do those students fare in the programming models? Or actually where they are in the programming models.
Yes, I'll just jump in to say that as part of our partnerships with our agencies, we're working with the DOE on and expanding the number of opportunities for youth with disabilities in particular. We're working on helping them to develop work sites that are appropriate, providing them with work readiness materials that are appropriate in the setting, to meet the needs of our young people. We're also working with our work readiness platform, which now is called Hats for Ladders, where our vendor is actually working on translation services so that any young person, regardless of their primary language, will be able to access work readiness curriculum in a way that is most beneficial to them.
Thank you. Councilmember Aviles, if you're done with questions, I will now turn to Chair Stevens for her second round of questioning.
Thank you to all my colleagues who had questions. Those are very thoughtful and really important questions. I still have quite a few questions to get through, so thank you guys for that. Providers and advocates report staffing shortages in the youth programs. They point to a number of contributing factors, such as inadequate wages and benefits, the resultant flight of youth workers to better paying DOE participant positions in other industries, vaccine mandates, childcare issues, background check backlogs, among others. What measures has DYCD taken to increase access? What measures has DYC taken to increase access so that employers don't have this issue, providers don't have this issue?
That's such a good question. This is an issue for so many fields, so many industries, and of course it's like even more challenging in a childcare environment where ratios are required to meet regulation. So we are trying to get ahead of any ways that we could possibly support to start that conversation. We've been working with our colleagues Valerie and Daphne to try to connect CBOs that have a high number of seats with, like, in particular, those who haven't really capitalized on SYP. We're gonna have more workers than ever. We're gonna more workers than ever, and we'd like to direct as many as possible into childcare jobs. We also, one of your panelists early mentioned a provider meeting that we held last week, and one of the things we specifically asked was, like, what can we do to help you with your staffing needs? Because we hear that a lot, and I think we wanted to hear some more specific ideas. I got great input from both DYCD staff and from some community-based organizations already about some strategies we can do to help support. And then I think one of the, like, wages obviously is one of the clearest way you can help recruit staff. And last summer we, OMB and the city made a decision to supplement the traditional summer price per participant. That is something that we are looking at again for this summer. And we look forward to getting back to you. I know my colleagues in the fiscal unit at DYCD will be back here a week from Monday for the budget hearing. And we look forward to, like, sharing more information about that with you soon.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge that Councilmember Rita Joseph has joined us. So just on the, as we're talking about providers and staffing, providers have found it difficult to retain and keep staff, as we just mentioned. However, they then can't meet enrollment, and then that means that they can't meet their because they can't meet enrollment because they don't have their ratios 1-to-1, but that negatively impacts their contracting if they don't meet their enrollment requirements. And this seems a little bit unfair. What if anything could we do to help support this while folks are staffing up and getting up to par to make sure that they're meeting their enrollment?
I think some of the ideas I mentioned earlier, again, welcoming ideas. I think a follow-up email to that meeting went out to solicit additional ideas on how we can support with staffing. And I want to say that our childcare, for those reasons that you've outlined, our childcare programs are not performance-based contracts. And so when we commit to a contract with a provider, we're not reducing that contract because of low enrollment. That could happen if that's sustained under enrollment and it looks like the city's investment might need to have some shifts. But when we make that commitment, the funding is committed. We don't want providers to be in a position where they're not sure about getting access to their full budget. We do evaluate enrollment, especially in typical times. It becomes part of your contract evaluation. But to a large degree, we have suspended any kind of penalties on providers around enrollment on these crazy circumstances. We certainly acknowledge that there have been so, like, 10-day school closures, hybrid learning. There's so much that impacts the social distancing and hiring challenges. There's been so much weight that we already don't have performance-based contracts, but we've, in terms of funding, but we also made that adjustment in terms of, like, contract evaluation.
So program providers don't have to worry about being negatively impacted if they're not meeting their enrollment numbers because of staff ratios.
That's right.
Okay.
And at the same time, we're gonna, we have contract expectations. We want to support providers to meet those enrollment numbers, and that's the way we're gonna approach it. We are, to be frank, our providers have been meeting enrollment. They met enrollment this past school year. So I think we've moved away from enrollment being a huge obstacle. The staffing is where we need to focus. Support.
I think that that's something we have to look at, right? Because if we're meeting enrollment and then we're not meeting staffing, then that means our ratios are off. So the question is, what does that really look like? And is that creating an environment that's unsafe for kids? Because if we have enrollment and we're having staffing issues, those things aren't adding up. So I think that needs to be addressed and looked at. So we should definitely be thinking about how do we address those issues.
It's a good point. Thank you.
So we're also hearing from a number of providers that they still have not been paid for last summer. What is DYC doing to ensure that providers are get paid for last summer before we start this summer? And how can we prevent this from happening again? Because I think my colleague said earlier, and I agree, programs should not have to fit the bill to run these programs. So what is the holdup and how do we prevent this from happening again? And when will people get paid?
I really appreciate that question. We've heard so much feedback on this. Valerie, I'm diving in on the youth services part. But this, this is an issue across the board, and we acknowledge that this timeline, in particular for the summer contracts, is not our plan. We do reimbursement contracts, and contracting is a process, but this is unacceptable. And I'll tell you a little bit about the challenges and how we're gonna, how we think we're gonna be able to do better in 2022. In the first instance, beginning in March 2020, with so much change to our contracts, and some of you will remember summer services eliminated in 2022, like complete uncertainty. Then we learned maybe there was some stuff they could do. Contracts came back on board. We had learning labs. We had this big blowout in summer rising. So much investment in DYCD's contracting that was really unprecedented. And at the same time, the city launched a new contracting system. It does have a learning curve to it for DYCD staff, for CBO staff. We've been looking very recently about efforts to ramp up further technical assistance to support on that system, which is sequential. DYCD's staff think very creatively about how to batch contracts. In other words, like if your base contract is getting a few amendments to it, do we get these first amendments out real quick, which, for in sequential, which is going to be like more work, but it gets the first batch out quickly. Those are the kinds of considerations, always with cash flow to providers at the forefront of our minds. But we also, well, here's some things where we think this could go better. Last summer, the bulk of our summer providers did not have baseline registered contracts, and they do this summer. So in the first instance, there'll be more base funding, which includes funding in the months of July and August to draw from providers. That should make a significant difference. We're also, there's been a task force around contracting issues to kind of tackle ways to more streamline this. And even within that, DYCD is really working closely with our city agency partners and MOCs about tweaks that we can make to help expedite this. I want to add that I welcome like any provider who's having a special look, acknowledging it's not acceptable how long this is taken for summer 2021 contracts. Any provider should reach out to me directly, because our fiscal team, our ACO team, they are extremely responsive in terms of figuring out ways to be creative about getting additional cash flow to providers who are having real concerns. So please do reach out, and please advise providers who are connecting with you to reach out if they're experiencing a real cash flow concern. I think for those reasons, we don't expect to be here back again in summer 2022, and we're still offering support for anybody who really who needs it. I don't know, Valerie, if you want to add anything to that, or any of my colleagues.
Totally agree. And just to add, same thing on the SYEP side, and any provider who's really struggling, they all know how to contact me or a senior member of my team, and we're happy to work with them really closely to see what we can do internally to help.
I just want to say, like, I know this is a lot of the contracting stuff is out of your control, but I think that is just 100% unacceptable that we have providers who still have not been paid. We're putting the burden on the providers, and I think that we have to get to a place where we need to pay them their money, and to just say that, we're sorry, and this is, like I said, is not under DYCD's control, but we need to work together and really push to make sure that they get their money expeditiously, adequately, because there's no other place where you can actually get these services and say, I'll pay you in 2 years. And it should not be acceptable to our providers who are taking on the bulk of this work. So thank you for your continuous supporting them to get it done, and providers should definitely reach out to you guys so you can continue to support them. I wanted to shift gears a little bit to talk a little bit about the RFPs, because I heard a couple of times that a lot of programs are still working on contracts from 2019, which is a little alarming to me. What is the typical timeline for completion of contracting process for please describe your typical process and timeline for RFPs.
I don't know if that was directed toward SYP or just in general on
So we could start with
UICD.
SYP and then we can go to Compass and Sonic, whichever one. But I think we need to talk a little bit about RFPs because it sounds like a lot of these contracts are running off for older RFPs.
Sure.
I mean, I will go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Susan. You want to start or should I start? I'll start. So for SYAP, we re-RFP'd the program and those contracts started in 2019. So our typical process is a 3-year contract off of an RFP. And we're renewing those contracts right now for this summer. I think still TBD where, where we'll go beyond there. But RFPs are very time consuming, and so we want to be really thoughtful and deliberate about when we reissue RFPs, and that is something we always think about. Our ACO and fiscal team are certainly the leaders there and can weigh in next week at our budget hearing too.
Yeah, agreed. We typically run on that cycle. 3 + 3 years is a kind of a traditional model for 6 years plus renewals. If it goes further than that, we definitely anticipate new contracts. We want to really welcome in new providers. I think one of the council people mentioned that, like we want to open this process up. We list at DYCD, when people haven't been able to be part of an RFP for a long time, they really reach out to us like, when is it coming? Because that's their opportunity to get new funding. So in our largest portfolio, the Compass portfolio, we're in the draft phase of a concept paper, which we plan to release before the end of this year. And with the new administration, we anticipate a fresh look at these contracts, new RFPs, and new contracts. We understand that we want to be competitive. In other words, we want to open it up for competition to allow for our providers who are doing an amazing job to reapply, and for new providers to come into the portfolio.
So providers and advocates report that the contract reimbursement rates are not kept to pace. What is being done to address this?
I think that's another benefit of releasing a new solicitation for services, because it's an opportunity to refresh all elements of the model, programmatic elements, structures, including price. So I know, some of our, like I mentioned with Youth Services, there are some of in our portfolio who are operating of contracts for many, many years. Part of that has been addressed to some degree through like cost of living adjustments and additional increases. As I mentioned, partly in recognition to that, we added funding to summer budgets, which acknowledging the frustrations with that. So we look forward to addressing those when we have new solicitations.
How are you working with the providers to get their feedback on the per participant rate for these contracts?
I mean, I'll say that we take an advocate and community-based provider. They're not shy, right? You had a panel before this hearing began. They're not shy to let us know like when it's not working. And so we absolutely welcome that feedback. And it's a process, and we've gone through model budget processes, and when we've released a new RFP, when you're soliciting a new service, funding is a key part of that process and negotiation.
So what role do stakeholders and advocates play in the Compass and Sonic RFP process? And what role does Human Services and programs like UNH play with that process?
We've had a tremendous amount of focus groups. We've had surveys. We did some stakeholder engagement meetings. We listen to feedback from advocates. So we're and the whole point of a concept paper to a large degree is to get that input before the solicitation is finalized for release. So we hope that we have like many ways for our contractors to weigh in on that process.
Thank you. So providers and advocates have expressed that DYCD and that they've reported problems having communications and interaction with DYCD, with particularly around lack of clarity, inadequate communications, delays in response to providers' concerns and issues. What is being done to better support youth providers?
I think that's a good question. And Daryl and Valerie, I'll welcome you to weigh in too. I will say this is a really high priority for DYCD. Having good, frequent, open, transparent communication with our providers is like our #1 value. So whether it's like planning regular meetings with the entire portfolio of providers, or making our contact information completely accessible. Each provider has a program manager. They have a deputy, a director, very often assistant and associate commissioners, and a deputy commissioner. And every single one of us is open, like the line is open, the email is open. I think we pride ourselves on strong communication with CBOs. I do acknowledge there are times when things don't go as well as we'd hope, and summer 2021 is a prime example. But I think that is a real outlier in the experience that providers have had with DYCD, including even with other, rushed kind of services that had to happen during the pandemic. I would love to hear any suggestions about how we could improve communication. I welcome any CBO leadership to, call me up, send me an email, or we welcome, this committee to share their feedback with DYCD in general. This is really important to DYCD.
And I will acknowledge that DYCD has been making an effort to open up communication, but I think it also, and I think I said this the other day in a meeting, where it gets very tricky when you're also the funder, because people feel like I can't come to you and be 100% honest. So I think we definitely have to start thinking about what that looks like in the future, because it's very hard for a provider to come to their funder to tell them about their issues, because they can then be looked at as being negative or having negative effects on the agency. So I think we definitely need to really sit down and brainstorm what that might look like in the future. My next question is, and this is more about agency, and I'm big on collaboration and making sure that we're working together. So I would love for you guys to just talk about what other city agencies that you guys are working with to effectively launch summer programs, right? So we know we have DOE, we know some other things, but I'm big on collaboration and making sure that all people are being brought to the table. So I would love you guys to talk about that.
Sure, you want me to start on the workforce side? Because there's so much to say here. So of course, DOE is one of our closest partners, but beyond DOE, we have partnerships with CUNY, who we talk to, with ACS, with NYCHA. We have a really strong partnership with NYCHA because it's a priority for us to recruit young people who live in NYCHA developments, right? So our providers are in there, and we work directly with NYCHA, with MOCJ, with DOP, with DHS. I could go on and on. It's really critical for us. None of the work that we do can happen without every city agency being a partner. And it's not just being employers, that those partners that I just mentioned are really thought partners in working with our young people for the program, right? We also have city agencies who come to the table and serve as work sites, and we're really collaborative there. Parks is an amazing partner. NYPD is an amazing partner. So many others host our young people, and we work really closely with them to make sure that, from all angles, the entire city is engaged in partnering with us on our summer efforts, and even more so this year. That's been a priority for us given the large charge.
On the youth side, I would say for summer planning, our closest partners right now, of course, DOE. I mentioned earlier, we've been working with DOHMH and speaking with them in discussion. Of course, City Hall is involved in this. The Mayor's Office of Operations is even involved in this, in planning for summer. We speak with NYCHA daily. One of our strong partners is MOCJ. And then, of course, I'm not sure if everyone knows, but my background is actually Saturday Night Lights, where we have 106 programs across the city operating essential quality services from 5 to 9 p.m. on Saturday evenings, bringing young people in and providing a safe space for them. We're partnering with the NYPD and the DA's offices across the 5 boroughs on that initiative, as well as parks.
Thank you. I want us to move a little bit to talk a little about facilities. How is DYCD working with DOH to ensure that all sites have SAC licenses or camp licenses to provide summer programming? And even before I ask that question, I know last year, because of Summer Rising, a lot of programs were working under the DOE. Is that something that's going to be happening again this year as well? Or all folks are going to be going back to SAC licensing and camp licenses? Daryl, I think you have your hand up.
I'm looking at Daryl to be, he's waiting to be unmuted.
Perfect. 1, 2, okay. So yes, last year because of the timing, we actually activated, to your point, under sort of a DOE authorization, if you will. Right now, we're in deep talks with DOE and DOHMH. We're going to get information out in the next few weeks. But for all of our baseline summer programs, similar message from what Susan said earlier, you should start hiring, start planning for at least the base seats that you have. But again, those discussions that we're having take into account clearances that are needed, staffing, and so forth.
So they won't be working under the DOE as they did last year, no?
A decision hasn't been made yet, but we are in talks, so we're going to get information out relatively soon.
Okay. I would love for that information to come out sooner than later, because we all know that the SAC license process and having to get camp licenses is not easy, and the turnaround usually takes 4 to 5 months. So, I think we're a little bit behind schedule on that. Another thing is we've had some providers, say that they've been having issues with some of the schools around getting the permit process, and it's often become difficult to navigate, and it takes up a lot of time. Can we talk about how we're supporting providers and DOE to ensure that this permit process is streamlined and supporting folks?
And Chair Stevens, I'll answer that in 2 ways. One, for the summer, of course, we're working with DOE in the planning of that. As we roll out information, we're gonna be sure to help streamline that permitting process. If we're talking about existing programs, those providers who are having any issues should reach out to the program manager, and we'll help support them by connecting with our DOE counterparts and taking care of whatever needs to be taken care of.
These are mostly about summer, and we've had even some SYP folks said that they need space and they're having difficulties getting space within schools. And once again, I want to stress that all of these programs, and I don't think I even said it today, all these programs are the same providers, the same students, the same families. And so we should be working in collaboration and not against each other. And so, we have SYPs who are expanding, so they obviously need more space. And so how are we working with schools to ensure that they're allowing CBOs to have space and access to those facilities to ensure that they're able to really roll out this increase in slots?
Thank you, Chair, for that question. And Daryl, I'm just going to add to what you've already said. But part of it, I think the beauty of the early collaboration between DYCD and the Department of Education right now is that we're having conversations about exactly those types of concerns. And in fact, the other Deputy Chancellor, who is a big part of this committee, who unfortunately had to leave to meet with Deputy Mayor, is in charge of our buildings and our facilities, and so is having conversations about space quite frequently. We want to make sure that we have enough room for all of the programs that we need, the number of seats that we're going to offer, and the number of students that we anticipate based on those seats. So those are conversations that we are having. We don't want to have an experience. We don't want families and students to have an experience like last year. We don't want providers to have an experience like they did last year, because we want this to be a sustainable program that really launches the way that we work together when we are all available to be in person, so that we can really continue to do this year after year.
I just wanted to thank you so much for that answer. I really appreciate it. And that those things sound like it's going to really help improve and move some of the things forward. But I just, once again, want to just issue that we should definitely get this information out sooner rather than later. And I just wanted to circle back because our commissioner had brought up Saturday Night Lights, and one of the questions I wanted to ask was around the providers. I'm hearing from providers that some of them are struggling around opening some of their Saturday Night Lights programs. What are we doing as far as supporting them to make sure that those programs are up and running and fully operational?
So any provider that, we shouldn't have a problem with opening Saturday Night Lights programs. Any provider that is having a problem should reach out to my SNL team, and we'll triage.
Okay. So I have a question regarding feedback around, we know that you guys have been working with focus groups with the providers and trying to get feedback from like Summer Rising and from programs in general. How are you collecting feedback from participants and families?
You're right. We have tremendous amount of feedback, and I see my colleague nodding vigorously. She might want to add to this. Plenty of feedback from the adults, like through virtual meetings, through letters from our advocates and CBO leadership. Carolyn may want to talk about the DOE work that went into getting feedback, including from young people. And NYCD also has initiated its own evaluation work, including tons of focus groups with hundreds of participants and survey responses.
She's trying to.
Oh, there we go. Thank you. Sorry, it's often a bit confusing with the lag. So thank you. Thank you for that question. And yes, thank you, Susan, for lobbing it in this direction. I was nodding vigorously and smiling when that question came up, in part because at the same time I got an alert in my email inbox that I had just received more feedback from focus groups. So we are collecting it daily and regularly. And we're looking at information from CBO stakeholders whom we've been meeting with pretty regularly, but also some of those CBO partners have been helping us to do outreach of principals, parents. We've talked to teachers and we've engaged with students as well. And so we're holding actual focus groups in Zoom rooms, but we've also had interviewers who've sat with folks and asked a series of questions. And we're collecting information just to hear in terms of feedback from last year, but also what they'd like to see for this year and how we can ensure that this is a successful program this year.
So I'm really happy to hear that we are focused on getting some feedback from parents for the Summer Rising program and the DOE component, but I think we also need to be expanding in all programs and making sure that we're getting feedback from all people, including parents and families and young people. I think that it's important that we are taking their voice into consideration, and probably out of all the feedback, their feedback is probably the most important. I just have a few more questions. How was DYCD work? Wait, no, that's not my question. Sorry. What percentage? So I just wanted to go back because I know folks we wanted to get back to the pay rate. So what percentage of increase in youth providers contract reimbursement rate do you believe is reasonable that folks should be getting for their contracts?
Thinking about last summer, we increased the base rate on elementary programs by 30% and on middle school programs by 10% across the board on any additional seats that providers had taken upon and on their base seats. And we heard feedback that made a tremendous difference in them being able to offer higher wages and do some of the things that they needed to do to support a good summer.
Okay. I just have one more question. How do you guys feel DYCD can do a better job at supporting its providers? And this is on all fronts.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. As Susan said before, I think that is like the core of everything we do at DYCD is thinking about that. And I can speak for the whole executive team that it's something that is at the forefront of everything that we talk about is what are we hearing from the providers and what do they need from us and what do we need to be advocating for on their behalf. I think we've made a lot of progress over just the last few months of sort of shifting, at least on the workforce side, but I think this is agency wide, shifting the way that we're talking to the providers instead of it being one-way conversations, really having opportunities for there to be dialogue. Things like, focus group style meetings as opposed to just webinar style meetings have really, from what we have seen in workforce, shifted the relationship already. And sharing with them how we're responding to their feedback and then checking in with them to make sure that's what they needed, right? Like those operational things that I had mentioned before, things like an audit manual, things like, 12-month budgets, all that operational stuff that they've asked for. It's personally like calling the provider and saying, we just announced this. Is that in line with what you need? And what do we need to do to support you to make that change really be meaningful, right? So it's all about shifting the way that we're working with the providers. And I think everyone here is really committed to that because as we go through all these big expansions, none of it happens without them. And we're all just hyper aware of that and really trying to move the needle on supporting them and giving them the resources they need to be successful because their success is our success, is the success of the participants we're trying to serve.
Thank you. I will now ask the committee council to call my colleagues for any additional questions.
Council members, we are now about to conclude our second round of questions. If you have any questions for the administrative panel, please use the raise hand function in Zoom and I will call on you in the order your hands are raised. Chair Stevens, seeing no other hands raised, we have concluded the second round of questions and I will turn it to you for any closing remarks to this administrative panel before we move on to public testimony.
I just want to say thank you guys for being here with us today. I would love for you guys to make sure that we all stay on to hear the public panel speak and hear their concerns. Everyone who was here today, I think that it's really important and valuable. I want to go on record for saying I appreciate your hard work. The job that we all seek to do is not an easy job, but we're all doing it with the right intentions, which is the intentions of having quality program for our young people. I'm excited to be on this team because I believe we're all a team, DYCD and the providers and myself. And I see myself as a bridge to bring us all together to move forward and make our programs even better. So we will go on to the public forum. Thank you all for your time this afternoon.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. We definitely will have representatives staying behind. Thank you.
Thank you all, and thank you, Chair Stevens. We are moving on to the public portion of our hearing, and I would like to remind everyone that for public testimony, I will call up individuals in panels. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the raise hand function in Zoom, and you will be called on after everyone on that panel has completed their testimony. For public panelists, once I call your name, a member of our staff will unmute you and the Sergeant at Arms will give you the go-ahead to begin speaking after setting the timer. All public testimony will be limited to 4 minutes. After I call your name, please wait a brief moment for the Sergeant at Arms to announce that you may begin before starting your testimony. The next panelists will be in the following order: Dante Bravo from the United Neighborhood Houses, Lazar Treshan from Here to Here, Jen Wall of New York Junior Tennis and Learning, and Malik Salmons from Youth Action Youth Build. Dante Bravo, you may now begin.
Your time will begin.
Thank you, Chair Stevens and members of the New York City Council for the opportunity to testify. My name is Dante Bravo, and I'm the Youth Policy Analyst over at United Neighborhood Houses. UNH is a social change organization representing 45 neighborhood settlement houses that reach 765,000 New Yorkers from all walks of life. As many council members have pointed out before, the pandemic is still here, despite the city having returned to in-person instruction for the 2021-2022 school year. Because of this, the city must issue clear guidance to providers on what to do in the case of positive COVID-19 cases, as well as precautions to take to minimize risks for this summer. Any future guidance from DYCD should clarify the role of providers, especially in serving young people who have not received the COVID-19 vaccine, especially if their families have chosen not to vaccinate them. Settlement houses also need more resources to meet youth mental health needs that have been exacerbated by the pandemic. Last summer, staffing for K-8 summer programming proved especially difficult given the high number of program participants, estimated at around 200,000 participants when compared to previous years having served 90,000 young people. Despite this, providers made the impossible happen. They served more youth when many of their sites were at capacity or struggling with staffing. However, providers are concerned that the summer rising model of last year may create a precedent where a rush to serve as many students as possible ignores the reality of a stark staffing crisis within the field. Without any additional financial support from the city to pay competitive wages, staffing issues threaten to undermine providers' ability to run even basic summer programming, let alone quality programming. While UNH and the larger provider community will always support partnerships with local universities and SYP participants to develop a pipeline for future full-time youth development professionals, this is at best a stopgap solution to an impressive need within the field. At worst, this strategy actively contributes to the notion that jobs in youth work are temporary and therefore should be compensated at extremely low rates, despite the level of expertise our youth development staff have cultivated with over decades in the field. The only way to fix this staffing shortage is to pay providers for their work on time and to take unprecedented measures to raise wages for future work. Cost per participant rates need to be higher to keep up with inflation. UNH urges the city to increase the cost per participant rates to $1,848 for elementary school programming and $959 for middle school programming. These higher rates would set a wage floor for summer counselors at $21 an hour, allowing providers to offer competitive salaries in the midst of a staffing crisis within the field. This is also in line with the #JustPay campaign for human services workers. Furthermore, last summer, DOE paraprofessional substitutes made a base rate of $25 per hour, and DYCD messaged that this pool of talent will no longer be available for providers to lean on for summer of 22 in the previous DYCD webinar. Moreover, summer 2022 needs to be centered on fun. It is crucial that the main focus of summer programming be on positive youth development instead of academic remediation. CBOs must be empowered to lead planning and ensure that a summer program includes enrichment activities outside of academics and time for play. Settlement houses have been doing this work for decades. We need to let our providers do what they do best. Without these actions, we fear that the continued lack of investment in summer programming will exacerbate already existing crises within the field and rob young people of New York City the opportunity to play, learn, and grow into successful young adults. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to testify today. For more questions or to reach me, you can reach me at dbravo@unhny.org. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Lazar Treshan, you may now begin.
Your time will begin.
Hi, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Lazar Treshan from Here to Here, which is just a couple blocks southeast of the Chair's District in the Bronx. We work to connect young people to employment, and we think the best way to do so is really by braiding school and work. And it was really, it's wonderful to have a new Youth Council Services Chair who not only has experience with the program, but focusing on some of the issues that aren't as always talked about, some of the contractual issues, and I really appreciate that. But also, really on the connection to year-round school interests. I really love I submitted a testimony and I won't read it. So let me just hit on a couple things that I'd love to accentuate. Having the young people speak first, which is a wonderful new tradition as part of this hearings, is great. And what I think was really powerful was the comments that Councilmember Riley and the chair picked up on around career interests of young people. And traditionally, because of the program lottery, and the budget cycle, young people were really just placed into jobs at the last minute, or even work experiences that couldn't even be called jobs. A truly year-round school-connected universal program, which is what we should have, that is not lottery-based, really would allow, and 12 months contracts, which I hear rumors that we're moving toward, but if there's one thing we can do to professionalize the field for providers, is really providing those year-round contracts, allow them to hire full-time staff, not seasonal because of the year-round nature, and really professionalize the field, allow them to work with young people during the year to figure out what their talents and interests are and really connect them to those jobs. It can't be a program, SYP can't be a program to get young people off the streets. Young people are not a problem, they are the solution to a lot of our problems. And by really thinking about it that way and connecting it to what else happens to their lives in the school year, and that means CBOs, really connecting CBOs to schools through expansion of the school-based SYP, which is non-lottery, really allows those ramp up and allows those extra resources that schools and CBOs together can make happen to both support the young people during and the school year and the summer. I think, there, having been the youth employment program at DYCD many years ago, I think, DYCD kind of told themselves on a little bit in this hearing by saying we've never worked closer with the DOE. Whether the program is 75,000 slots or 100 slots, DYCD needs to be working with the DOE, with other agencies. I think it was the chair's comment, so the young person's life doesn't start or end in any one particular contract, and it should be on us as the city and policymakers, not providers all the time. The burden is always on providers to connect the dots across their contracts, but really some centralized resources. Again, that idea by Councilmember Riley and the chair of connecting young people to specific career tracks. What about a centralized service that DYCD could provide around helping define and connect to those things? What about a centralized resource to help monitor, young people across providers who work at the same work sites to do some centralized monitoring support of those work sites? How do we use this expansion year as a real learning year to pilot a universal-based system? Issues like, what could DYCD and DOE together work to centralize that would really create new value to young people? Young people are getting these paychecks for the first time. It's through debit cards. There's a huge centralized financial literacy component that could be added as part of DOE programming for all SYP students. And lastly, I'll just say, an idea I heard yesterday, I think we shouldn't have young people applying anymore for SYP. They should be automatically applied if they're a high school student, and they should have to not apply to have their application in the program. If we really have a commitment to serving young people, let's do the reverse. Let's opt them in, and they have to opt out if they don't want to be in the program, because we know these experiences benefit everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and really excited about the next 4 years of this council.
Thank you for your testimony, Lazar. Jen Wool, you may now begin.
Can I start?
Yes, your time will begin.
Hi, I did prepare something and I will read it, but I just want to acknowledge Chair Stevens's remarks to DYCD and thank her, because these are long-standing challenges that providers, CBOs have faced. And just to give you a highlight before I go into my prepared speech, right now they've released summer work scopes and they've set a deadline for those work scopes for us to complete when they haven't even completed the program design. So you ask them, when will they know? When will they know? In the interim, we're held to a deadline and we have to produce these work scopes and then revise them, which is a huge staff drain. People are working hard enough as it is. So I just want to acknowledge that. I'm with NYJTL. I'm the Chief Education Officer. NYJTL served over 3,000 youth during the summer of 2021 in Summer Rising. And understanding how the pandemic resulted in learning loss and the lack of enrichment opportunities, we really appreciated the DOE and DYCD partnered to create Summer Rising. But I did want to share with you some of the pros and cons that we experienced. We also just learned today that the DOE will not be providing staff for us, which is a huge problem, because one of the pros that we had was that the DOE provided a nurse, which was critical during COVID, and paras and some other support staff, so that we could keep the kids as safe as possible. There were, however, areas both in the planning and in the implementation of Summer Rising that could be improved. Collaborative planning is central. And when I say collaborative, I don't mean DYCD representing the community-based organizations. We need community-based organizations at the table to talk about the preliminary planning. Like, again, last year, we were given, 3 weeks to work with the principals and come up with a plan. So that didn't work at all. Staffing was a huge problem, as everybody mentioned, so I'm not going to get into it, but it was even more difficult with the backlog of the fingerprinting because we could not, once we knew how many kids ultimately were in our program, which was in some instances triple the amount that we were contracted for, there was no way we were going to be able to bring on additional staff in terms of fingerprinting. It just, the summer isn't long enough. Really, the most important point I want to make is that we were told unequivocally that we could turn no child away. And we had, in many instances, over 200 more participants than we were contracted for. And as many of you mentioned, that meant that we had kids that we had no paperwork on. So if a kid got hurt, we couldn't call a parent. If a kid had allergies, we didn't know about it. We were, our hands were tied. There was no way to meet ratio, and the safety of the kids is always paramount for us. So really, we have to think about the safety of the kids. I want to offer good programming, but it has to be safe. And finally, the finances, which you've heard about in terms of the fact that we still haven't had our contract amendments registered, so we can't recoup the funding. I just want to state finally that we're committed, NYJTL is committed to serving the kids of New York City, but we are committed to do it safely and in a way that supports them and doesn't put them at risk. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. I will now call on Malik Salmons. You may begin.
Your time will begin.
Salmons, and I just wanted to say thank you all so much for taking the time today to listen to us all in this public hearing. It's been a pleasure to be able to learn from many of the other people who have been able to speak throughout the day. So I'm representing the Youth Build New York City Collaborative. The Youth Build New York City Collaborative is a collection of New York City's 8 Youth Build programs. These programs are spread out generally throughout all 5 boroughs across New York City. And at these locations, we primarily focus on empowerment of young people aged 16 through 24. A good majority, actually somewhere around 95% of our students come in with no high school equivalency training, no diploma or anything like that. And so the way that we are able to build these connections and strong connections with our students is from some of the resources that we get to offer them. Currently, all Youth Build participants are able to obtain their high school equivalency certificate through our programs. In addition to this, we offer a wide variety of career tracks from tech and broadband infrastructure to building operations, construction and culinary school, and many others. Our programs connect young people to employers and help them to find jobs that fit them and that will set them up for success in the future. One of the other services that we provide to our students as well is alumni services. So we stay connected with them, making sure that they are getting the resources that they need, making sure that they are arriving on time to work and things like that, and just being able to succeed the best that they can in their new career endeavors. So kind of our connection to the Summer Youth Employment Program. In the over 4 decades of experience Youth Build has in New York City, we have typically run as a program that hosts students year-round. The long-term commitment that our students make allows for them to be in strong positions to begin work and apprenticeships as soon as possible upon completion of our program. This model, partnered with the Summer Youth Employment Program, could establish an incredible pipeline that allows for young people to have substantial work options lined up for the future. And after completing the SYEP, there could be tremendous opportunity for them to continue to develop their skills to be full-time members of the New York City workforce. Young people have real needs, and the ones that we work with are often not having the help and empowerment opportunities available to them to kind of compensate for many of the hard backgrounds and lack of resources they are coming from to begin with. So we look forward to hopefully partnering with the SYEP in the future and developing part of the upcoming generation of workers and the workforce and world changers as well in the New York City area. So thank you guys again for letting us speak today and for just learning a little bit more about our program and hopefully what we can do together in the future. If you guys would like, you guys can feel free to all contact me at msammons, which is MSAMMONS at yayb.org. So thank you again for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your testimony. Chair Stevens, I will turn to you now for any questions for this first panel.
Nope, I don't have any questions.
Great, thank you. And seeing no hands raised from any other council members, we will turn to our next panel of public testimony. This panel will include Maggie Maroff of Advocates for Children, Randy Levine from Advocates for Children, Jennifer Calendris from United Advocate Activities Unlimited, and David Calvert from Youth Build New York City Collaborative. Maggie Maroff, you may now begin.
Your time will begin.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Stevens. Congratulations to you and to the full committee on this first hearing of youth services this year. It's a really important one. I'm actually speaking today on behalf of the Arise Coalition. We are a group of organizational and individual members working together since 2008 to improve access, experiences, and outcomes for youth with disabilities in city schools. My message today is simple and can't be ignored. Any summer programming that the city undertakes or supports this year needs to be designed to include youth with disabilities from the start. In the past, that hasn't always been the case. Last summer, as was acknowledged earlier, and thank you for all of that, we saw serious problems around access and inclusion and programming. We heard about children entitled to busing because of their disabilities who couldn't attend summer rising enrichment programming because the DOE provided no bus home at the end of the day. One of the first cases that I, in my work, brought to the city, both DYCD and DOE, about summer rising last summer involved staff at a CBO that wouldn't allow a student to attend their program because of his behavioral needs and because they weren't equipped and didn't feel that they had the support they needed in order to support him. This summer, the city must ensure that no student with disabilities is turned away from city-funded programming. Accommodations, modifications, and other supports, including behavioral supports, need to be available for students as needed at all sites. The city needs to roll out a process for families to seek accommodations and supports, including, and I heard someone say this before, paras and nurses for students to participate in summer programming. The CBOs need to get training on working with students with disabilities and on how to get more supports as needed. I was really encouraged to hear DYCD and DOE flag this earlier. I really hope it is sufficient. Programs need to be sited in fully accessible buildings. Youth with busing on their IEPs need to actually have that busing and all other IEP mandated transportation supports. And they need that for the daily programming and for field trips. We saw a lot of youth left out of field trips last summer. Field trips need to be planned with all students, including those with disabilities, in mind from the outset. Without all of this, summer programming will essentially exclude a large percentage of young people with disabilities. We know how important that programming is, and we want to make sure they're all included. It's really time for New York City to step up as a leader in inclusion for those with disabilities, and to make these changes would go a really long way towards that goal. Thank you very much. I'm available to answer any additional questions if you have them.
Thank you for your testimony. Randy Levine, you may now begin.
Congratulations, Chair Stevens, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I also want to thank Deputy Chancellor Quintana and other members of the administration for staying to listen. It's great to see you. My name is Randy Levine, and I'm the Policy Director at Advocates for Children of New York. We focus on students whose needs are often overlooked, such as students with disabilities, English language learners, students who are homeless or in foster care, students with mental health needs, and students with involvement in the juvenile or criminal legal system. Unfortunately, time and time again, we have seen the students we serve left out of programs that are touted as being universal. Merely saying that a program is for all youth does not make it so. Assessing summer programming readiness is not only a question of whether programs are set up to be running, but also ensuring the city has an intentional, targeted plan to provide specialized support to youth who need it so they can fully participate in summer programming. Given our limited time, we'll give just a few examples of barriers we've seen and recommendations for change. Last summer, students with disabilities were turned away from summer rising programs with the explanation that the programs were not equipped to meet their needs, despite the city's legal obligation to provide accommodations and support to students with disabilities so that they can fully participate. Given how short the summer program is, this year, the city needs to roll out a process for requesting and approving accommodations with enough time to ensure that the individualized support students need are in place for the first day of summer and that no young person is turned away. Last summer, students with disabilities and students who are homeless who require bus service were told they could only get bus service for the academic portion of Summer Rising, meaning they had to leave the program hours before their peers and miss out on afternoon enrichment activities in violation of their legal rights. This summer, the city should ensure that all students who need bus service to get to school have bus service or a comparable door-to-door alternative available for the full day of summer programming that does not rely on parents having to transport their children or lay out money for transportation when their children have a legal right to transportation provided by the city. Last year, we heard from families who did not know about Summer Rising and other summer programs. This year, the city should launch a strengths-based outreach plan to ensure families of historically marginalized groups of students know about summer programming and have needed support in enrolling, including targeted outreach and support to families living in shelter and immigrant families. This year, as in past years, the SYEP application and instructions are available online only in English, posing a barrier to the thousands of young people whose primary language is a language other than English. The city should ensure that SYEP information and applications are available in at least the 9 most common languages, that the application asks if youth need language support at their placements, and that youth receive the language support they need to participate, regardless of their home language. We also want to ensure that students get the academic support and social emotional support they need over the summer. Even before the pandemic, fewer than half of NYC students were reading proficiently, with alarming disparities by race, disability, language, and housing status. We urge the city to use the summer to provide students with the evidence-based reading intervention they need. As another example, DYCD and the DOE should work together to connect SYEP experiences to the classroom, providing students with academic credit for the skills they learn on the job. We look forward to working with you and to ensure that all youth have the opportunity to participate in summer programming and to fully participate. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you for your testimony. Jennifer Colindres, you may now begin.
Your time will begin.
Thank you. Thank you to the committee and Chair Stevens. I can't tell you how relieved and excited I am to have somebody that was in the field that can understand what I'm about to say in a very real way, without the bureaucracy, without the red tape. And I'm going off script here by saying that. My name is Jennifer Colindres. I'm the Director of Prevention Services, formerly the Supervisor of Compass and Sonic for United Activities Unlimited, but I'm jumping in to support my team members as I always do. I'm not going to go over my entire testimony. I've submitted it, it's written, and almost all of it has been spoken about today. And I want to say to my colleagues, thank you so much, colleagues in the field, for what you've done to support, because we all know that we're doing the real work. And we're doing it outside of a union or being supported or protected in any real way. We're well-versed, all CBOs are well-versed in collaborating with multiple entities. We're always the guest, right? And there's always a landlord. And so we're very versed in being able to coordinate between DOE, DOH, DYCD. Frequent changes and the need to pivot is not new to us. And summarizing in theory is a great idea. It's to be commended, but it's March, everyone. It's March. We haven't, no one will even confirm that it's happening. So how are we to pivot? As one of my colleagues said, work scopes are due. Work scopes are due so that work scopes can be thrown out and revised afterwards, just adding more additional work. I'm going to give you an example where I had to jump in last year. I had to jump in on July 3rd because there was an overflow of over 300 students and they didn't have a summer rising program. And on July 3rd, DYCD jumped onto a call with us. So July 3rd and July 4th was for planning on how to receive 300 children that following Monday. That was with 3 staff members. Fortunately, we were able to utilize our partnership within DOE that we form so they were able to support us. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it. It was a success, but it was a success with our blood, sweat, and tears. We are expected to expand enrollment. DYCD's message of enroll, enroll, enroll every time we were on a meeting last year with no ability to ask questions in the chat was misleading. Every child has a seat is misleading because there isn't any adults there with background checks to be able to welcome those children in a safe manner. And I'm sorry, Deputy Chancellor, I meant to thank you for staying on the call past the administration's questioning to hear from us. Differentials for the CBO staff were never discussed. And the DOE staff were able to negotiate shorter schedules. In some cases, they were out the door by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. While they recruited our staff members, they were paying them 2 to 3 times more what we were able to pay them. They were giving them Fridays off, and they were leaving by 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, leaving us even more hit where we had more of a staffing shortage. In some cases, we were working 10 to 12 hours after working the learning labs, after being on the ground every single day during the pandemic when our colleagues were at home, where our evaluators were sometimes still at home. We were with the children, and we will continue to do so. It would be punitive to require our staff to work under the same conditions again this year and not financially compensate them for their efforts. We must honor their mental health by providing a fair schedule. As for SYEP, we need to continue to fight for responsible expansion and without sacrificing the quality. All of these points have been discussed. The contracting points have been discussed. The fact that our agency alone has had to put $2 million out without being reimbursed yet. It's March. It's March. I thank you so much for allowing me to speak. If there is anything I can do to support any of my colleagues here, please feel free to contact me at jcalindres@unitedactivities.org.
Thank you so much for your testimony. David Calvert, we will now turn to you to testify.
Your time will begin.
Okay, so yeah, how's everybody doing? Well, I've been enjoying this hearing so much. It's excellent, and I've just learned every time I listen to everybody speak from around the city. I'm David Calvert. I'm with Youth Build NYC Collaborative citywide. We've been out here doing this work for about 40 years. You heard a little while ago from my colleague Malik Salmons speaking about Youth Build. I see that Malvin Ortega is on hold to speak a little later on, and you know, he's a participant in Youth Build, so I hope he gets a chance to talk pretty soon from the Bronx. We just, you know, glad to talk about Summer Youth Employment Program and also to talk about year-round programming. I myself came up through SYEP. That was my first job. In those days, it was called Neighborhood Youth Corps. Anybody remember that? And now it's SYEP. And you know, it launched for me a career in public service that's lasted 40 years at this point. And I can say that our Youth Build program might not even exist without SYEP because we used it as a springboard to start the program up back in 1979 when we on a hope and a dream, we thought young people could actually renovate buildings, build low-income housing, and we started doing gut rehab of buildings. And it was SYEP Youth that started that program up in the summer of '79. If we hadn't had that summer, I don't think Youth Build would ever have existed. And now it's across the country, 8,000 youth do Youth Build every year. It's overseas in 23 other countries. It caught a wave. And I really credit SYEP for opening that door, that possibility for us as young people in the community at that time, trying to do something productive and positive in East Harlem. So yeah, so SYEP all the way. But, you know, I just want to remind everybody, of course, that SYEP is a 6-week program for summer. It's a summer youth, you know, it's not the whole ball of wax for the whole year. So the important thing to me is what happens after that, and you know what's happening year round, especially for young people that are not in school and not working. that are not getting the academic excellence they're supposed to be getting, that are not gaining anything, that are drifting, maybe they're going off in the wrong direction. So the youth build serves that opportunity youth population. And, you know, we get support from the speaker initiative of the city council for the past 7 years to supplement money that the federal government is also giving for youth build. And that package has allowed youth build to continue and to, you know, really prosper in all 5 boroughs of the city. And, you know, this year we'll be coming back to the speaker, to the new speaker, and talking about a $3.2 million speaker initiative for youth build. And we will be bringing that also to you, Chairman Stevens. You know, we welcome you to this job. You know, you seem, from everything I've heard today, so ready for it. And, you know, the fact that you advocate strongly for young people in our city, especially our opportunity youth that really need that hand up in this critical moment, is meaningful to me and meaningful to our city. So that's our message, and I'll pass the word.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Chair Stevens. If you have any questions for this panel, please feel free to ask them now. Otherwise, we'll turn to our next group of panelists.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to say I wanted to acknowledge that I hear both Maggie and Ronnie around the students with disabilities, and we definitely need to be making sure that we're looking at a closer look at those students and how we're serving them in that population. And I think it's one of those conversations that we often do not have around programming, and it is something that we definitely need to work on together. So please reach out to my office so we can set some time up to talk, and so we can make sure that we're tackling this together, because like I said, this is about us working together and finding the best solutions. And I always want to make sure that I'm the glue between the work that's being done and the agency. And I hear the passion and the frustrations, and I'm here to continue to support. And so I will yield my time so we can go to the next group of panelists.
Thank you, Chair. The next panelist to testify will be in the following order: David McGillen of Salvadori, Kenneth Jones of Salvadori, Malvin Ortega of Sobro, and Edward Sanchez of the New York City Youth Agenda Steering Committee. We will now begin with David McGillen.
Your time will begin.
Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you, Chair Stevens and the Committee on Youth Services. And thank you, Deputy Commissioner Quintana, for staying around to hear the testimony. So my name is David McGillen. I am the Deputy Director of the Salvadori Center, and we teach math, science, and arts using collaborative, project-based learning. So that means we get kids together to work in small groups, hands-on, to solve problems. Because, if we're in a small group, Chair Stevens may know something that Deputy Chancellor Quintana doesn't know, and Deputy Chancellor Quintana for sure knows stuff I don't know, but together we can solve real world problems. So we get kids to work together to do that. And we go into under-resourced communities. We're in about 80 sites citywide. And we know about learning loss from the pandemic, but we also know about learning loss through summer learning loss. And the SYEP is a great way to help with that. The NYU actually did a study just before the pandemic on Salvadori programs and found that Salvadori prevents learning loss through project-based learning. So we're just here to say that we are ready to help anyone who needs us during the SYEP. We can be ready in 2 weeks notice, to get ready all our materials and supplies. As you know, project-based learning is quite material heavy. So we're ready to help you. We've worked in Summer Rising, we've worked in Career Clue, and we love this program and we'll support in any way we can. Ken Jones is also here from the Salvadori Center, but I think I can speak for him unless he wants to add anything. But otherwise, thank you so much for your time. This is a great hearing, and we appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Kenneth Jones, you are listed next to testify if you would like to share.
Thank you. I just want to say thank you all. This is great. And the work everyone's doing for the kids in the summer is really fantastic. David did a great job The only thing I would add is one of the things we've incorporated over the last several years is bringing in young career professionals, architects, engineers, contractors, developers, who are a lot closer to the kids' age than we are. But they look like the kids, they sound like the kids, they have the similar background, whether it's immigration history or the neighborhoods they come from. And they help kids, especially those from under-resourced communities, see themselves as being successful with STEAM, see themselves as being successful at school, in careers. And the kids are great because they ask the young professionals, how did you do it? How did you go to college and work at the same time? I've got to help support my family. How did you do it? And so they provide a real link to the kids that shows them pathways to be successful. So this, helping with the summer programs is something that's very near and dear to our heart. Working with DYCD, we've worked closely with them in programs during the school year after school, but also in the summer. And we're just very fortunate and happy to be a part of this. And as David said, we'll do everything we can to help you all be successful. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Malvin Ortega, we will now turn to you.
Your time will be.
Okay. How's everybody doing? I feel like everything, you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
I feel like everything has been talked about in terms of contractors, the money situation. For me, speaking for the youth and for the students in my class and for the caseworkers here at So Broke, it's really important to know that, everybody in this live is doing everything that they can. And, the ones doing the hardest work is just everybody in this live. I know everything has been talked about. I just wanted to just, give these, these couple minutes I have to say, like, I really appreciate everybody here that's doing the necessary work to, get certain things done. And it's not gonna happen overnight. We all know that, but if we just keep spreading the word out and just giving courage and faith, because without no faith and hope, all else fails. But that's it.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now turn to Edward Sanchez.
Your time will begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Ezra Sanchez, and I would like to first thank Chair Stevens and the other members of the Youth Service Committee for allowing me to have the chance to speak today. I am a member of the New York City Youth Agenda Steering Committee, a youth action member at Citizens Committee for Children, a student activist at YVote. I'm a lifelong New Yorker. I attended public schools since kindergarten, so K to 12, and now I'm a proud CUNY freshman at Baruch College. I love my city, and I'm proud to be a New Yorker, and I'm committed to ensuring that the future is bright for youth in this city. When I was in middle school, there was a program located right in my school in Brooklyn. The name was NIA, and they had an after-school program and a summer camp. For me, it was a wonderful experience as I was provided with various activities as well as homework help. They also had cooking, sports, dance, public speaking, leadership, chess, art, photography classes, and more. They even provided free meals. This benefited my family and I so much, and it allowed me to be engaged in a variety of activities with my friends and to still learn and keep my mind fresh and not lose months of learning over the summer. These kinds of opportunities are why I can confidently sit here before you today as an advocate and a community leader. I'm very excited about the news that I've been hearing about the universal SYP and year-round youth employment for high school students. But we need universal after-school and summer programs for all kids, starting in kindergarten. This means Beacons, Compass Summer Camp, SONYC Summer Camp, NYCHA Cornerstones, and SYP. These fundings needs to be baseline so that we are not fighting for restorations every year. I have spoken during the New York City budget season on this very same issue every single year since 2017, and I cannot believe that I'm still making the same speech. Transition in administration and the new city council gives us the opportunity to finally make this a reality. Recently, Chair Stevens spoke at a press conference in support of the New York City Youth Agenda. I hope if you remember me. Thank you for holding my sign. I greatly appreciate it. Still grateful for that day. The Youth Agenda was created by a group of high school and college students who have worked for over a year with adult allies from Citizens Committee for Children, CCC, CUNY's Intergenerational Change Initiative, ICI, YVote, and DYCD's We the Youth Advisory Council to compile data from several youth-led research projects, which engage over 3,000 young people from across the city, from every borough. One of the Youth Agenda's top 5 recommendations has to do with economic mobility. In the Voicing Our Future survey of over 1,300 New York City youth, less than 50% report receiving career, internship, or job opportunities. Only 54% of the over 1,400 youth who responded to the ICI Yay census reported that they feel prepared to accomplish the next thing they want to do in their life in terms of personal, academic, or professional development. More troubling still is young people do not feel they will be able to afford to stay in New York City as adults. 40% reported that they don't feel hopeful about their ability to afford living here, and 19% do not want to live in the city when they grow up. And we cannot afford to lose out on the potential these youth have to offer for the future of New York City. And statistics don't lie. It is vital that we view investments in summer programs as a way to propel youth forward in terms of career building and economic mobility. Summer programs keep our kids safe and set them up for future success. It provides vital resources for youth, and we can't leave them behind. I'm here to ask stakeholders to please bring change now, not later, to make initiatives needed that all New York City youth are in dire need now. Thank you so much. And once again, if anyone wants to please, discuss over our findings, our data from the New York City Youth Agenda, you can email me at the real Edward Sanchez. That's therealedwardsanchez@gmail.com. If you choose to discuss even further on these data and to really go into depth on why is it that way. And for everyone else, for these stakeholders, please make the change happen now. Please. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your testimony, Chair Stevens. I'll turn to you for any questions or comments for this panel.
I currently don't have any questions or comments, but just thank you for the work that you do. And Edwin, I absolutely remember you, and thank you for all your work. And I'm always excited to hear when young people are speaking up. So thank you both, Mr. Ortega and Mr. Sanchez, for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Chair. We are now moving on to our final group of panelists, and they will be speaking in the following order, beginning with Lena Bellick of Children's Aid, and then Elizabeth Bird of Educational Alliance.
Your time will begin.
Lena Bellick, go ahead.
Sorry.
Thank you. Hard act to follow, Edward. That was amazing. Thanks so much to Chair Stevens and the Services Committee for holding this hearing on summer 2022. My name is Lena Billick, Senior Policy Analyst at Children's Aid. And so I just want to echo all the other providers on the call today to really thank you, Chair Stevens, for your spot on questions today and your advocacy on this issue. It's just so appreciated by providers and by youth. So Children's Aid is a multi-service human services agency positioned throughout childhood to empower young people to succeed. So we have 2,000 staff working with 45,000 youth and families at 40 locations. So that's early childhood centers, public schools, community centers, and health clinics. We're also one of the many providers that partner with the city to provide summer programming. So as summer providers, we know that summer youth programs are a critical bridge between school years for young people, and that's especially needed right now. We are thrilled about the SYEP expansion, truly, but looking to summer programming, more holistically, we hope that lessons learned from last year really drives planning, echoing a lot of the other providers on the call today. There are a few things we can recommend to help summer run smoothly, and we have more detailed recommendations and lessons learned in our written testimony. But first, like everyone has said, summer details have to be decided on and communicated as soon as possible. We can't say it enough. Public health guidance on how CBOs and schools will work together, details on the model, scope, space, funding, all these things have to be communicated as soon as possible so that we can effectively plan for a successful summer. Every day that providers have to wait really does impact our ability to offer a successful summer program. And payments to providers also must be on time. These things are true every year, but I would say especially now as the sector really grapples with these serious workforce challenges. Seconding Chair Stevens on the background check, backlog. It's really impacted the sector's ability to staff up, especially for a summer program if it's going to be like Summer Rising. And we're hoping a decision is made also very soon about how this problem will be dealt with this summer so that we can plan. We're also going to just echo everyone on the importance of true coordination between all stakeholders and city agencies that will be involved in summer programming. So that's DYCD, DOE, DHMH, CBO partners. It's also making sure communication sent out from all agencies are consistent. This is really necessary to decrease the administrative hurdles that were such a challenge last summer and that just often keep programs like this from running smoothly. So there's so much we still don't know right about the impact of the pandemic on our city's young people. But what we do know is that the last few years have been full of isolation, and we know about the negative impacts of isolation, disconnection. And at the center of all of this, like why we're here today, is the importance of rebuilding that connection. And that's what youth serving CBOs do best. With the city's support and commitment to making the summer run smoothly, we will do just that, I'm confident. So thank you so much to the City Council and the Youth Committee and Chair Stevens for your support of children, youth, and families, and thanks for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony, Lena. I will now call on Elizabeth Byrd.
Your time will begin.
Hi, thank you, Chair Stevens, for holding this hearing today, and congratulations for a great hearing. I think all of the questioning was really spot on, and really appreciate the topic and the emphasis on this topic. My name is Elizabeth Byrd. I am the Director of Public Policy at Educational Alliance. All of my points in my testimony, which I've submitted, have really been covered. So I'll just very briefly read a few points to emphasize. Educational Alliance served as the lead CBO partner at 2 Summer Rising sites last summer, serving 277 students, and provides summer programming through early childhood programming. Like many CBO partners, our experience in 2021 was notable for the confusion, lack of support and communication from agency partners, and major program changes that were announced at the last minute. Our contract for providing summer programming was not approved until the end of June, leaving us less than a week to recruit, train, and confirm background clearance for about 75 new staff, ensure our sites had adequate staffing in place, and to coordinate with school leaders about programming goals and needs. The theory behind last year's Summer Rising program to expand access to any family that wanted to participate was promising, and we applaud the previous administration for making a real commitment to universal access. Universal summer enrichment programming is an excellent opportunity to address the learning gap and to ensure that more children have high quality programming to keep them engaged and learning. Summer programming for youth is a fundamental support for working families who need reliable childcare during the summer months. While Summer Rising was ambitious, the city must make significant commitments to program design, ensure efficiency in operations, improve contracting processes, establish equitable access for all students. We therefore recommend the following. Summer program design must emphasize positive youth development. Last year, Summer Rising sought to blend some of the academic programming typically reserved for mandated summer school into an expansive vision for summer youth programming. While this model may be necessary given the many disruptions to learning during the last several years, the focus must be on positive youth development and creating engaged, supportive environments for young people to grow. Contracting must be finalized early to ensure program quality. We need to improve enrollment deadlines, and be transparent about targets. And finally, to ensure equitable access for students with disabilities. Last summer, families were responsible for sharing information about student IEP needs. Instead, this information should be provided to summer program operators directly by the Department of Education. We believe in the goals of summer programming and universal summer programming, but reforms are needed to make this program truly successful and significant for the young people we serve. Thank you so much for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you for your testimony. At this point, we have concluded public testimony. However, if we have inadvertently missed anyone that would like to testify, please use the Zoom raise hand function and we will call on you in the order in which your hand is raised. All right, well, seeing no hands raised, Chair Stevens, we have concluded public testimony for this hearing and I will turn it over to you for any closing remarks.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who testified today. I want to thank DYCD, DOE for showing up and being part of this conversation. I stress the urgency of making sure that we are rolling out all information to providers as soon as possible so they can adequately prepare for the summer. I think that one of the things that I am most in trying to emphasize, if anything, that providers who are providing summer, who are providing programs for SYEP, who are providing cornerstone programs, and who are providing services for summer camps, whether it's Summer Rising or whatever, they're all the same providers and they're serving all the same children, families, and communities. So it is upon us as an agency and a city to make sure that we are rolling it out in an adequate way. This hearing to me was very personal. Like I stated in my opening statement, this is the second summer that I am not running a summer camp myself. So I understand what it is to get a summer camp up and running and moving. And I also understand the importance of this work. I want to let all the providers know that I hear you, your work is respected, and we will continue to push forward as we have always done. No one gives us the credit for when schools are closed, we are open. When the pandemic hit, we were open. We have been on the ground and on the forefront for forever, and no one ever gives us the credit and that we deserve. But I'm here to let you know that I am doing that today and moving forward. I will continue to hear you. I will continue to move forward and work in collaboration with you. And now I would like to adjourn my first hearing, and I'm just very excited. And so now I am adjourning the meeting at 4:27. Thank you all for staying. I know it's Friday, and everyone have a wonderful weekend.